Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 214. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today? I like this this shot, the darkness in the background. It's your normal shot, but it's a little dark back there. You're up front. You have a white shirt on, so it really is a nice contrast here. I don't know if you intended that. How are you?
No, not intentional. I just I was streaming a little bit earlier, and I like to have the little colorful lights on in the background. I just never changed them, but I'm feeling pretty good. I woke up so early today. I've been getting up around like 6 to 6:30 in the morning, like every day for the last couple of days, which is like not normal for me, but it's been pretty nice to actually have like I've had 2 meals today.
Wow.
Already. Which is like, it's amazing how much better you feel just being a person, you know, instead of waking up at like 2 p.m.
Did you have a breakfast where it was like eggs, bacon, toast, like a bowl of cereal, orange juice, milk?
Well,
fruit.
Maybe like half of that. I didn't do this. Those commercials with the cereals, and they're always like, it's always like a glass of milk alongside a glass of orange juice and cereal and like cut fruits. Because
they used to say it was like part of a balanced breakfast. And I'm like, dude, this is maybe the maximum you should be eating in the morning.
Like 3,000 calories.
It's not breakfast. Part of anything, you know? It's just...
It's part of diabetes.
I remember learning from a person that used to do some of those commercials that they would often put the cereal in glue, like, and that was like the shot because it made it like extra vibrant, which I thought was interesting. So it's like not milk; it's like Elmer's glue sometimes. It's kind of strange. What are we talking about? Oh yes, Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Stand Media, wearing his Evangelion shirt, or as I would call it when I was a kid, Evangeline. Yeah. I had no idea how to say it. No idea. None.
There's a scene in the movie, the Robin Williams movie, 1 Hour Photo, where he says Neon Genesis Evangelion, or so, it's maybe even worse than that. And it's like this moment. It's like this great movie, and there's this moment that sticks out. That's like, I mean, I guess on set, is someone going to correct Robin Williams on how to say Evangelion?
No, you have to.
No.
This is we've talked about this in the past with cities like Concord, New Hampshire and stuff like that, where I've watched, like in The West Wing, the president is supposed to be the former governor of New Hampshire. The state capital of New Hampshire is Concord. And he says several times in the series Concord, and no one would say that, you know, and someone should be like, dude, someone's going to notice that. And so, yes, right. I do think you stop Robin Williams and say, no, Robin, Nanu, this is how you say it instead. But that is a good movie. I want to admit, reiterate, Chris.
It's a crazy movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna argue the other way, because why would Robin Williams know how to say Neon Genesis Evangelion?
Yeah, that's
why would he know how to say that? The show does, because he like hands the action figure.
Does the little kid say the name wrong?
No, it's Robin Williams that says it, I believe.
So, I mean, his character. That's in character then to me.
But I feel like there is a level of prestige where sometimes people will not bother you about stuff. I just saw this the other day. There's a series on Hulu called 321 McCartney, which is basically Paul McCartney hanging out with Rick Rubin and just talking about songs for 30 minutes a piece. And there's multiple shots where Paul McCartney is chewing gum on camera. And as someone who worked in production for 8 years before I worked for Last Stand, that is like if you see someone chewing gum on camera, you instantly tell them to spit it out. Like, no questions. It's so annoying watching someone chew gum. But at the same time, you're recording Paul McCartney. Do you tell Sir Paul McCartney, hey, we need you to spit out the gum? Like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. You know, He can chew gum if he wants. He can shit on the floor for all I care.
Yeah.
I mean, he's earned it at this point.
He can chew shit. As well.
If he wants, whatever he wants.
Whatever his heart desires.
I understand that, because when I watch documentaries, which I do often, I'm always amazed sometimes that, you know how they get like usually 1 or 2 shots of a person, they're talking to them over an afternoon or something, so they splice it through the documentary. So that's like the shot they have of this person. And some of the shots and some of the people look so bad. and disheveled in some of these documentaries where I'm like, what? I was watching one the other day. I don't remember what it was about. The guy's tie was so long when he was sitting down that it was like over his crotch. And it was really distracting. And I'm like, why didn't someone say like, dude, your tie is way too long. And, you know, we're shooting you for posterity here. So we're happy to help you. Have a stylist. Like, do it with some tact. Be like, it's the stylish. I'll be like, oh, you know, we're going to fix this tie a little bit. Like, just do it. You know, don't even like ask. Like, you're the one who knows. Not with a Paul McCartney necessarily, but with these other people. Because I'm always, there's like a hair on a person's like, you know, on their shoulder, or the hair's a little missed. You can see the hair like sticking up through the lights. Like, what is going on here? This isn't Sacred Symbols. You guys are doing a documentary that's cost probably millions of dollars. Fix it. You know? So
there's nothing worse than seeing a lapel mic with the wire in front of a shirt like that. I've had to do it on shoots before because it's just like you're quickly trying to do something. But when you see something in any kind of professional manner, it makes me want to die.
When I was at IGN, I used to wear T-shirts all the time. And then I stopped wearing them almost entirely and started wearing button downs, specifically because we'd have lapel mics on almost every day. And so I would just shove them up and then clip them right onto the thing. And that's why I started, if you look at videos, I just started randomly only wearing button downs because it was just, because then it would scrunch up the shirt and you'd have like this like thing going on.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know. We're also recording a half an hour later, which I appreciate the guy who you guys wouldn't know out there, but Micah's parents are coming today. They're staying with us overnight. And so we had to get some preparations going and all that. And she's excited for that. So much to do. And otherwise, I appreciate you guys, your patience on that. And we appreciate all of you out there listening to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast each and every week. You can get it 3 days early and ad free over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, with more than 12,000 of you there supporting us. Thank you so much. Please join us. There's many different tiers you can explore. Early and ad free access is one of those things. Submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the show on the various threads. Sacred Symbols Plus, which is our exclusive Patreon podcast twice a week. That's interviews and deep dives and all the rest. I just did a really interesting one with a gamer from India to talk to him about what it's like over there. And he lives in Pune, which is where the Ubisoft studio is that recently got taken off of Prince of Persia. But we were going over it because his dad is a merchant marine. So they have a lot more money, I think, than the normal Indian person does. So he had access, like his dad would come home with PlayStations and all of that kind of stuff. But we were talking about a lot how like Counter-Strike is life in India, apparently. And free-to-play games and all of these things are just huge. It's a much more communal place to play games. And so it's an interesting conversation. So go check that out. Dustin, you did a call-in show, I think, recently. We did one on collecting. I had Gio Corsi on recently. We did one on Ashfall. I'm going to send an email out to people soon because things are so slow. Like, they're just so slow that Sacred Symbols Plus episodes are not materializing the way they usually do. Like, this sounds bad, but it's like you actually have to put on like a little bit of effort into thinking about an episode, because usually what ends up happening, as Dustin especially knows, is we come up with like 5 ideas and then we never get to them because, oh, this thing got bought and this game came out and this thing requires Hogue to come on and this thing. And now we're just like at a dead zone. So I feel like now is the time. So we got to figure it out. Do some new call-in shows, some interviews, et cetera, and so on. So thank you there. Merch, laststandmedia.store. We appreciate your support over there. Get the stickers, free domestic shipping on all stickers, high quality merch and all the rest. And also want to note, not much to say here, although I am interested in your guys' take because I've been dealing with this pretty much by myself, but Dustin's been involved a little bit. But just to catch everyone up, this is episode 214, but on episode 213, I provided information, let's say, about the new Tomb Raider game that was leaked to me. This caught the ire of the game's publisher, Square Enix. Now, it's worth noting, a lot of people are confused about this. And I'm a little surprised that a lot of people are confused about this. Sometimes I wonder what's going on out there. When a company is announcing that it's buying another company, it doesn't just happen like that. It's not like you're giving the dude at the fucking lunch table $10 for his comics, or something like that. It takes time. It could take years for this to happen. So people are like, so why would Square Enix be involved? It's because like Square Enix still owns Tomb Raider and they still own Crystal Dynamics. And so we got served through Patreon a DMCA from Crystal Dynamics, actually. And they sent it on July 29th, but we didn't even hear about it until August 1st. And we talked to Patreon. Now, it's worth noting, DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, it's this whole thing. It's a very widely expansive thing. And that's usually how companies protect their assets with art and all of the rest and music and whatever. So they DMCA'd us. We never get DMCA'd because we don't do video and imagery at all on our shows. So, and people ask why not? As we say sometimes, like, why don't you have B-roll and stuff? It's like, because we don't want to get DMCA'd. So it's like outside of our purview. We just never expect it to happen. So Patreon gets involved and says that they've been DMCA'd and they're a safe harbor, a so-called safe harbor. So they basically have to say, like, you got to take it down. And what's funny or what's interesting is that we didn't get DMCA'd anywhere else. So we had to edit it on Patreon, which we were happy to do. It's not a big deal. We're not trying to get Patreon into a situation. We're not trying to put ourselves in a situation. But we had to edit it there. But the Tomb Raider stuff is still as of the time of recording this, on YouTube, on podcast services. And it's been like almost a week. So I assume, knock on wood, but I don't know if they're going to DMCA us now on those kinds of things. But Chris, I'm actually eager to hear what you think of this, because it was by the way, you'll appreciate this. Dustin brought this up, but I did confirm this. There were groups of people at various entities listening to that VO and trying to decide what to do about it. So your Cockney Lara Croft was potentially heard in Tokyo and Europe and in Crystal Dynamics in the Bay Area and all the rest. And of course in Patreon. So what do you think about that situation?
I have never been more proud of anything that I have ever done. The fact that that's real, that people were paid money across the world to listen to that just purely offensive accent. Disparaging one of their IP, basically, is wonderful. I love that. I just found the whole situation, I honestly found like very amusing. Just because that was the first thing that was on my mind. It's like, so they listened to it and they must have had lawyers listen to it. That was like the first thing that came to my mind when I heard that this was going down. We communicate through Discord, and obviously, but like, I had a smile on my face the whole time, just imagining like really, really serious businessmen just playing this on like a smart board or something and just having to listen to that and then make a call, like a serious legal call on what to do about it. I guess this means that I nailed it, right? You know what I mean? Like
it's too close to home.
That's kind of how I interpreted it, where it's like they had to strike us because it was so close to what it would be that my reading existing out there preemptively before the game even exists is copyright infringement.
Right. Right. Because it's exactly what they envisioned. You took it out of their mind's eye.
Exactly. So I'm really proud. I'm like, Crystal Dynamics, if you want me to jump on board, like I'm totally happy to do it.
Forget. We can have Chris on board. No problem.
Yeah, I think we can make something like that happen. Now I want to be clear about a few things. First of all, and Dustin, we'll get you in here if you have anything else to add. You were on this conversation that I'm about to talk about. But if people want to learn more, we actually put up a video on YouTube with Rick Hogue, who is our legal analyst. He is a lawyer. All about this, what we did right or what we did wrong in the gray area that exists in terms of so-called fair use. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like I was acting clearly in the realm of fair use. It's news and it's noteworthy to our audience. It's not ill-begotten. And I hate to put it this way, it's transformative. The way we read it, you couldn't possibly interpret that as serious. So I think that there's an argument to be made there, but I also respect Square Enix and well, it's not Embracer, Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics' right to do this, I guess. And I'm not going to fight them. I don't think it's worth fighting them on it. I don't know if I'd win or lose. So it's totally not worth it. But one thing I want to be really clear about, and I think our audience knows this, is you guys know we have no communication with any of the publishers or developers, really, unless they're like our friends, like indie studios and stuff. But we don't get early access preview builds, review builds. We buy all of our own games. We choose what we want to play. That's not going to change. And I think it's important for us to note, especially for me and for Dustin, that our perceived, our perception, let's say, of Square Enix is not changed. At least it hasn't for me. I'm sure it hasn't for Dustin either. Yeah. We're going to treat them fairly. We're going to continue to buy their games. I must say they're still one of my favorite publishers. So don't worry about any of that. We're not going to be like, oh, fuck Square Enix and all of that. The few people I do want to say fuck you to, though, are the few outlets that just pretended this wasn't happening because of where it was happening. As if this isn't super relevant to all of us. As far as leaks are concerned and fair use and all of the rest and the argument of the gray area. So shout out to Video Games Chronicles, shout out to Push Square. shout out to others that wrote about it.
Dude, The Verge. That's
The Verge
crazy.
wrote about it. Yep.
Yeah, that was sincerely surprising
Yeah.
to see. And I read The Verge's article too, and it was a good one.
Yeah, they
Which is
interviewed me
like-
actually for that. I actually gave them comment for that. Yeah, it was. And I emailed the guy actually. I was like, thank you for being fair, because we don't have a great relationship with the Vox people, or like type people, you know? So, but this guy I have no problem with. And so I just want to be clear about that. Doesn't affect our coverage of Square Enix games, Final Fantasy 16, Dragon Quest 12. These are probably two of my most anticipated AAA games. My most anticipated game of the year is Tactics Ogre, which we're going to talk about later. So I'm far up Square Enix's ass. They actually use my own money to send me that DMCA, which is ironic in some strange way. But yeah, I wanted to just point all that stuff out. Like we're not mad at anyone. We were able to just to be very clear, the episode hasn't been edited on YouTube and hasn't been edited on podcast services. It's important to note we were only DMCA'd on Patreon. So to fulfill the DMCA request, we only had to edit the audio on Patreon and link to a different video. That's it. So nothing. So it wasn't really, it was more of it was just more of a hassle. It took like 2 days of my life and cost us like $1,000 in legal fees to consult with our lawyers. And Chris, they also listen to it. And I know my lawyers, you know, like they're in San Francisco, and our main lawyer, Oscar, is this big Hispanic dude. And I can just imagine him in his office in this San Francisco skyscraper with his eyes glazed over, you know, listening to this.
Dead face, just like...
I can't imagine when he gets emails from me, because I email him about all sorts of different things that we have to deal with. I get regular small bills from our law firm because they're just always dealing with small things for us, or just kind of looking into things for us. And I can only imagine, like, what does he think when he gets an email from me and it's like Tomb Raider help or something like that. Because he's like a normal person lawyer. I think I'm the only person he deals with in this realm, you know? So
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, that's the situation. Do you have anything to add, Dustin?
The only thing I wanted to add is just I said on Discord, you talked about our future relationship, quote unquote relationship, or feelings towards Square Enix. And I said, listen, if the president of Square Enix came to my house and shit on the floor, I would still buy and play Final Fantasy 16. It's just the reality. It's
Totally.
like, I'm just going to, there's no way around
Shit
it.
on the floor. He could shit on me.
Yeah.
And I'll be like,
You're
is
not
there
wrong.
is somewhere in this diarrhea a USB stick with a build?
Right, a code maybe on a piece of paper or something like.
Oh man.
We gotta
I feel
stop
like
doing
that
this
might
show.
dock at least like 0.3 per 0.3 off of the number score at the very least. It's
Yeah.
like, now I have to admit this is a 9.4 out of 10, but I have to admit he did shit on me. So I'm gonna bump it down to a 9.1. And I think that's
at IGN, when we would review games, we had like the pluses and minuses, you know, and that would be one of the minuses, like got
Minus.
shit on.
Got shit on.
minus the president of this publisher personally and intimately shit on my chest.
I hope, hey, Square Enix lawyers, I hope you're listening to this just as a follow up to see how we're discussing the situation. How's it going?
Some people, if you have a scat fetish, that might actually increase the score.
Oh, God help.
Just
God help you if you see a plus sign next to that description.
Right. Dragon Quest 12 plus got shit on.
Wow.
Minus turn-based combat. All right. That's actually a plus for me too. All right. That's it. That's all we have to say about that. Let's get into some things to discuss and start with hearing from the audience, as we always do, with a few odds and ends. Of course, you can write into us, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Use the weekly thread that gets posted on Wednesday afternoons Eastern time. That thread only remains live for a day, and then I delete it, and then I post it the next Wednesday. I do that so that you don't waste your time. And I put it live so quickly so that you don't write in with things that are old by the time we record. See, I always do things for a reason. Don't worry about me. David Richardson wrote in, said, hey guys, first time writing in. Now he has information about something we talked about last week. Has an electronic device ever gone up in price? Like that we can remember, like a like for like electronic device that's released at a certain price. It's the same thing. And then it goes up in price. And he says, hey guys, first time writing in, I wanted to mention that there are examples of hardware MSRP going up in Canada. In 2014, 4 months after the release of the PS4, Sony increased the price of its console and DualShock 4 by $50 and $5 respectively, due to the decline of the Canadian dollar. Don't have much else to say on the matter. Just thought I could give you guys a brief lesson on Canadian history. Thank you, David. That a few people wrote in about this. That's a good one. I'll accept that. If that's the best we can do, I think we're in a pretty rare space. And doesn't it seem like the Canadian dollar is always collapsing? Like the Canadian dollar has been collapsing my whole life. Like, what is going on? In the 1990s, the two NHL teams that moved from Canada to the United States, the Winnipeg Jets and the Quebec Nordiques, did so because of the weak Canadian dollar. How has the Canadian dollar been weak this entire time? And how is it worth anything if it's been going down this entire time? I don't understand. I just don't get it. There's just a problem that I can't compute. You know?
Yeah, it's like Jenga in an earthquake. It's like something about Canadian money is just when I went to Canada, and I will say their money is like really nice, like to the texture of it. I don't know if you guys have been to Canada recently, but like it's just like the way it feels. It's like this does feel a lot more valuable than an American dollar. I think some of them have like little scratch and sniffs too, because some of them smelled like maple syrup. I swear to God. But that aside, it is kind of astounding how consistent its collapse has been. Because I remember hearing about this when I was like in like 5th grade, about how the Canadian money's collapsing, and then again in 7th, and I'm like again in high school, again in college. I'm like, what's going on? What is happening in Canada? They're losing everything.
Yeah, there was because I remember I only know this because I was a huge hockey fan when I was a kid, that NHL teams had to pay their players in USD no matter where they played. And so this became a major problem for the Canadian teams and collapsed a couple of them. And yeah, I just always feel like, because we're always hearing Canadians complain about everything. They're always complaining. And they're specifically about the price of things. But the dollars are not like dollars to dollars. The loonie is not the greenback. But what I pulled out a $100 bill out of my wallet, because what are they doing to this thing at this point? There's like a blue line. Can you see it? Like a blue line?
Yeah.
And then there's like a Liberty Bell thing. And then there's all sorts of shit on like, it's just every time I feel like I look at currency, it's somehow more and more insane every time I look at it. Like, I know it's a problem to copy it, but it's just so weird that this has value when you think about it.
Though?
Well,
I mean, it kind of does.
Yeah, we
only because we believe
it
it does.
That's right.
The American military we've unanimously agreed that it has value.
Yeah, there's Benjamin Franklin. Good chance he would have stolen your girl back in the day. All right. We have another correction. Adam Dietzman wrote in and said, now I feel bad about this one because I noticed it and didn't protect my son. He says, gonna have to issue a stand down to Dustin and his pronunciation of Oregon. Oregon? Are you kidding me? Get it together. That's what he says. Now, I noticed it and I don't know why I didn't say anything, because usually that's when I'm like, I want to save you. You know, we the three of us have that relationship. I just let you hang though. I don't know why. I knew someone was going to have a problem with it. Why did I do that?
I have 2 comments.
Yeah.
Number 1, I'm from the Pittsburgh area. It's amazing that I can say anything even half correct. You know, people around here are talking about they're going downtown for an hour or so, stuff like that. So
you guys
every once in a while,
yeah.
I mean, I've been on this show now for 60 plus episodes.
I have no idea how long you've been on the show.
It was
you could have been on the show the entire time for all I know.
It's around that. It's around that.
That's a fair point though, because that area is, I don't even know. It's like talking to a bunch of immigrant Digimon or something. It's a miracle that anything is said correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second thing is that I don't know. So I have a theory about. I think someone tweeted about this. Maybe it was you, Chris. Is it possible if we wanted to drive engagement to our podcast, we intentionally put missay words specifically so people will comment? I guess write in on Patreon doesn't help our algorithm, so you should have left it on YouTube. But I've always thought that it's like, what is it about that compels people that they gotta correct someone when they say something slightly wrong? When I see that, I'm like, man, you must be real fun at parties. Like, everyone loves you, dude. But it's okay. I'll allow it. Oregon, I don't give a fuck.
It's smart. Like I've started, like, while I'm editing videos, I'll go through and I'll look for misspellings and I'll decide whether or not to leave them, because I know one of them will be a comment. You know, or at least like 10 comments.
Engagement,
which is good for engagement. So I'm like, you know what? Why not?
Yeah, it is. It's what you're saying you're talking about pedantic nature, of some people, the pedantic I personally hate that shit too. I hate when people do it to me. I am very mindful of not doing that to other people. I have to sometimes bite my lip. I don't like confrontation. I know that surprises a lot of people, but in my regular life, I'd rather just let people say whatever they want and just be like, oh yeah, that's nice. Right. And then instead of having like some sort of awkward interchange, because they said, what, not as bad as it's worse than Oregon, but it's not as common, is Illinois.
Oh my God.
That's pretty bad.
That's bad.
Yeah. So to be clear though, and Colin, you said this on the top, it wouldn't annoy me, Colin, if you corrected me in the moment on the show, because then it would save me from a moment like this. So I want to be clear.
What locked me up? I don't know what locked me up in that moment.
Yeah.
Because I noticed it. I knew it. I was like, oh my God, they're going to get him. And I
got me. I got.
I'm sorry about that.
And now I have to resign.
Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Curology and their line of custom-made creams, lotions, and more, which you can learn more about right this very second at Curology.com/sacred. Okay, so my friends, it's friggin' hot as hell outside here in Central Virginia. Some days it's literally too sunny to float in my pool and read a book. Even with sunscreen on and even with the power of Italian Americanism coursing through my veins, I can only take so much. So as you'd imagine, my skin needs extra care and attention, particularly this time of year. And Curology's extra boost of moisture and the overall quality of its products is an undeniable boon for me. See, if you want skincare that's actually made for your skin, Curology is the way to go. You'll get a custom prescription cream made for you by a dermatology provider for your specific goals, whether that's tackling acne, clogged pores, skin texture, dark spots, fine lines, or something else. You start by taking a short online quiz, and if it's a good fit, they'll ship your formula right to your door. Now, I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again. When I use Curology's products, I notice a positive difference. It's undeniable. Washing my face with bar soap and using a store-bought cream is my standard, and it has been for literally decades. I think when you get so invested in just doing the same thing over and over again, you don't realize how much better something can be. The outcome can be better than merely acceptable. So after using Curology's cleanser, my face feels cleaner. You know that feeling when you yourself can feel your skin, not to the touch, but just being in it? It's a pristine feeling, no doubt. And their moisturizer is just head and shoulders above the stuff I'm used to. So perhaps it's time for you, like me, to break out of what's easy and do what's best for your skin. And Curology is the way to go. For me, it's dryness, sun damage, and the like. For you, it can be a host of different issues, from acne to lines. But Curology can help. Get started with Curology just like I did with a free 30-day trial at Curology.com/sacred. That's Curology.com/SACRED. Just pay $5 for shipping and handling. That's Curology.com/sacred to start your free 30-day trial. Cancel anytime, prescription subject to consultation. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy, and you can book a session right now at BetterHelp.com/symbols. We all get derailed by life. It happens to literally all of us. Problems in our relationships or friendships, feelings of depression or anxiety, issues at work or somewhere else. Though many people keep this stuff to themselves, the reality is none of us are immune. And part of being human is going through the various pains of life. But it's absolutely vital that once you feel your feelings, you take action and do what you can to better your situation. And while some people find solace in, say, athletics, a great tool for helping you deal with what's on your mind is tried and true therapy. BetterHelp's online therapy makes seeking mental health care easier and cheaper than it's ever been, because not only do they provide effective therapy, but it's more affordable and takes virtually no outside effort to take advantage of. I found therapy helpful in the past, no doubt, but it truly can be a hassle to go find someone, get on their schedule, go to an office or clinic, and so on. I would know. And then you go. You drive to your session or you take a train or cab. You pray for insurance to cover everything and you pay an arm and a leg when they probably don't. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat-only therapy sessions, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. And you certainly don't need to say, get dressed or leave your apartment or house either. So you see, in using BetterHelp, not only are you tending to your all-important mind, but you're also saving time and money. It's a trifecta of pure wonder, all fueled by the power of online therapy. So if online therapy sounds right for you, head to betterhelp.com/symbols. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS. Sacred Symbols listeners get 10% off their first month of therapy sessions, so head to betterhelp.com/symbols to get started today. Again, that's betterhelp.com/symbols for affordable online therapy that can truly help you. Guys, we have an interesting new patron over on patreon.com/lastnamemedia, noticed by Grabalicious. Yeah. He says, "What's up, Slitter Titters? May I say a hearty welcome to the Gamer Battalion of LSM to Mad Catz Controllers as a $25 patron and Discord user. My question to you all would be, is this the slyest piece of marketing ad buy you've seen? I respect whichever intern came up with the strategy. A small fee to get a shout out as a patron on 3 shows. And yeah, it's 3 shows. Well, 4 shows technically a week, right? 1, 2, 5 shows a week, 6 shows a week. 6 shows a week is what that's how many shows we do a week. I don't even know how many shows we do every week. He says, so a small fee to get a shout out, access to a busy Discord, and difficult to address without giving them attention. Something I haven't done since I needed a cheap PS2 memory card 2 decades ago. It's a certain level of hustle I can respect, but it does pose odd questions for this type of patron support model for smaller creators. Does one refuse this custom on principle? If you make a point of it, do you give them attention as well? It's very interesting. I noticed this come through. I don't usually, like, we have like a basically like a ticker, as it were, of like people coming in and out, right? You decline, you come in, you change your amount. And so it adds up to a plus or minus number at the end of the month. And it stacks up. And I don't really look at it very closely because it's just people's names, right? I'm more interested in like, well, are we losing a lot of people? Are we gaining a lot of people? Why? I'm not like really looking into the Patreon numbers too seriously this summer because it is just so slow that I just, I feel like that's kind of a reason why we're not booming right now. But I noticed Mad Cats. I was like, holy shit. And then I was like, is it a joke? But it's not. I don't think it is a joke. And so for people that don't know, Mad Cats was a peripheral maker, and the new Mad Cats is a reformed version of Mad Cats. Mad Cats, as we knew it, went bankrupt after it was Guitar Hero or Rock Band or one of those things, I think, put them out of business. Mm-hmm. And then because they were the ones that like published the comeback of one of those. I don't remember what it was. And then they came back and they're based in Hong Kong now. So that's them. I haven't had any communication with them otherwise. I think they might have DM'd me and I said hello or something back, but do we decline it? No, I don't think so. Because they're not asking for anything. We're just saying their name in the credits. And we already do that for other entities, like podcasts sponsor this show and others. So they get their name read out and all of that. So welcome, Mad Cats. Chris, what do you think about Mad Cats being in the Last Stand Media fold?
I think it's interesting. I think when I first saw that, I was a little confused because I forgot about them kind of going away and then coming back. Like I thought that they were just kind of like making weird controllers this whole time. That I just haven't seen because I don't buy anything that's not official first party or primary from the publishers and studios. So it's like, to me, it was just bizarre because I didn't think companies did this kind of thing. I haven't had a company come to a Patreon of mine. You know what I mean? Like I haven't, or maybe I have, and I just haven't been paying that much attention. But I just thought it was just an interesting thing for a company to do.
Yeah.
What do they do? What do they do now? They're based in Hong Kong, you said, but like, what is their primary thing now?
They're doing I think PC peripherals now, mostly. Like
I think they're supposed to be higher end now too. That's what Ben was telling me when we were discussing this a few days ago. That some of their stuff looks not. I don't know. That's not an endorsement in any way because I've not used any of their stuff. But hey,
right. It's worth noting, Matt, it's just, again, the name was available after the bankruptcy liquidation. So some other entity just grabbed it. Right.
Dang it. I was about to ask, hey, if you got any of those Rock Band 3 band kits laying around, I'll buy one off you because they are insanely expensive now. And
that's so funny, dude, because people could not give those things away when they were out. They were like lining the shelves of Goodwill and shit.
Mm-hmm. For specifically Rock Band 4. Is the one that is because it's the most recent version now. Yeah. So
right. And that, by the way, that's the one. So Harmonix and Mad Cats co-published that game. And now I remember what happened. Mad Cats was responsible for the physical stuff. Harmonix was responsible for the digital stuff. And you know how that went. So, they were over their skis and then they got delisted and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, welcome Mad Cats, the new Mad Cats. And no, I don't think we would refuse this custom on principle as long as they don't ask for anything other than what others would get at that level. I don't think it's really that big of a deal.
Nothing untoward.
No, I don't think so. Shane Bain wrote in. I hope that's your real name. It sounds like you're the singer or the guitarist of a band called the Bains. And the guitarist's name is Shane Bain. It says, hey, CDC. How do I get my girlfriend to stop referring to me as daddy when speaking to our dog? I love our puppy, but she is not our child. And the more thought of being a parent at this point in life is downright terrifying. I'm cool with calling the dog kiddo, but I am no daddy. This is interesting because Micah refers to me as your father to the dogs. Go to your father. So I'm in a similar vein here. I don't mind it. I think it's actually funny. Dustin, what are your thoughts?
Well, you said about being father. I jokingly say, like, to Frisk, I'll be like, I'm your father, listen to me, but never daddy.
No, daddy's not. That's weird. Because when I first started reading his thing, I was like, because it was like, how do I get my girlfriend to stop referring to me as daddy? And I'm like, you have to keep reading, I guess, a little further than that.
Right.
Like, I don't know why she's doing that. Maybe you don't want her to stop. I don't know.
Holly will do it every once in a while when she's like, baby talking the dog or whatever, but not constantly. But it doesn't really bother me because I don't have a deep-seated fear of being a father, I think. I don't know. I mean, I get it. The dog's not your kid, but it's like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, my dogs are my children.
It's the closest thing that you've got to that type of experience as of yet.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not helping your case that you call your fucking dog kiddo. That's bizarre to me. Oh. That's weirder than your girlfriend referring to you as the dog's dad to me. I would never call my dog, hey, come over here, sport. Or, or any other one of those like pet names that like a parent would give to like a young child. That's just a bizarre. Maybe you are not as afraid of being a dad as you think you are.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I call Rush Buddy.
Yeah.
Like that's what I call him. Typically. Like, come on, buddy. Like that's, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's something deeply psychological about what's going on here, I think.
And who's more qualified to deal with this than us?
That's right. And also the tension inside of you, Shane Bain of the Baines, is do you want to be a father or don't you? I think you have a lot to think about here. And it sounds like your girlfriend's ready to go. If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Okay. Bruce, the genetic jackhammer rando, has the final inquiry before we get into some smaller news items. He says, hey, big C, little c, and the biggest D. Just wondering if there are or have been any plans to make a Last Stand Media podcast just about whatever. Sort of like the Snark Tank, but without using the N-word. With a rotating cast of LSM staff just hanging out and talking nonsense the way friends do, I'm certain it'd be well received by your community. I have to admit, I've thought about this. I'm kind of curious what you guys think of this idea. I don't know. I feel like we already do too much. Like that's the problem is I just feel like we do too much content. Like I don't have the time for more. I just don't have the time for more. And something would have to give, for that. So I don't know. I don't know what that would be. What do you think, Chris?
Well, I already do this.
Right.
So it's as far as wanting to do that type of show, I've already got my fill of that. I guess it could exist again, but then I'm operating in a space where I couldn't be on that show,
right?
Because then there would be just double episodes, and then I would run out of things to say for one of them because there's only so much that happens in a week. Like you can only have so much conversation about just nothing.
Well, I've had this idea. So when I was at Kind of Funny, I came up with the idea for what we called the Game Over Greggy show, which was this idea that the four of us at the time would come with each a topic to discuss with each other, like one specific thing that we wanted to say. And I loved that idea. I don't know if they do that anymore. I don't think they do. It used to be that we would come in without telling anyone else what the idea was, which I loved even more. But then I got in trouble for that eventually. And so we had to do it where like we would tell each other what the topics were. And I was thinking of just mimicking that since it was my idea anyway. If that's like something we would do, like to just be like Chris, Dustin, like whoever it is gets together and each person has like something they want to say, like something that they want to bring to our attention, whatever it is. And that could be fun. But yeah, it's a time issue for me. It's just too much. And I do think there is something to be said about scarcity as well. Dustin, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, well, there's an issue. I mean, like you said earlier, 6 shows a week, which I know we purposely design it that we don't expect our audience to listen to all 6, right? We want people to pick and choose, but some people do listen to all 6. And we're also a very lean team. We're probably the leanest we can possibly be for the type of outfit we are. And we do everything ourselves. The merch store was made by me. And it's all shipped by Micah. Everything we do, all the shows are edited by just Ben and I. So we're kind of if we add any more significant content, we are going to have to hire someone else or something, or rearrange our tasks or something like that. We've talked about doing an idea kind of like this before. Like maybe it would be some kind of a live thing in order to try to cut down on any type of production aspects to it. But I don't know. I'm interested in doing something that isn't non-gaming, but doesn't have to be, like something kind of that could be adjacent that might be able to broaden our appeal outside of just gaming. But obviously we don't have anything to announce, but I'm always intrigued by ideas like this. It's just a matter of figuring it out and whether or not we want to do a 7th show a week. I mean, we already get like, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I was just going to say, I think the way through it is to just have, if we were to do it, would just have different permutations of whatever group of us exist to pull out of, so that no one is on every episode and no one maybe is, maybe few people are on consecutive episodes or whatever. That way, like, we're not putting people out. People have things to say and it's interesting. I do like the idea of like being live, maybe even on Twitch or YouTube or something, but it really does come down. I know this sounds lame, but it's just a lot of time and it's a lot to add. It's a lot to add to the calendar. Think about the DMCA situation. When I owned this business, that was 2 days of my life just fucking gone. Right. Like that. And that's why I was late getting ready today, because I was dealing with a bunch, like, everything just got stacked and everything just kept getting pushed back. So I don't like putting, as you guys know, we're a machine gun. That's what I always say. We are a machine gun. No jamming, no new clips, just every week the shows come out when they're supposed to come out. And I don't want to put anything on the calendar where it's like, we can't deliver this. And so if we did something like that too, I think it would be sporadic, maybe even totally random. Because
a bonus.
Right. Exactly. The only other thing I can think of, and I don't think people would want me to do this, is that the next thing to go would be Sacred Symbols Plus, one of those. Like, we would swap one episode of Sacred Symbols Plus out for something new. Because on the 7th day, we must rest.
Right. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what people would think about that, because that is something we've lightly discussed, and I didn't know if you wanted to bring it up or not, but we have toyed around with the idea, instead of 2 plus a week, just 1, and then that would give us the leeway to introduce something else. But people love Sacred Symbols Plus too. It's like no one's ever going to be fully happy if we've never had to take anything away, right? Other than Side Quest, which isn't a podcast. That was just a YouTube thing. So
and I still think Side Quest will come back. Like, I don't think Side Quest is gone forever. Like, I think I think about writing scripts all the time and just sending them to you. Like, one specific topic that's been mulling around in my head, where I was like, I'm just going to write this, say it, and just send the audio to Dustin and just let him do whatever he wants with it. But yeah, I totally agree. We have to figure it out. The thing is that I don't think any Patreon is more valuable than our Patreon. With a $1 tier, you get 3 exclusive shows a week, right? That's pretty crazy. And so if you removed that to just make it 3 different shows a week, or it would be 2 shows a week and then a live product for everyone, so you'd be losing something. It's very complicated, but the funny thing too is that most people on Patreon, like a vast majority of them, are at the $5 level or higher. It's like the $1 and $2 tiers are entry tiers, but that's not where most people are anyway. So I don't know. It's something to think about, I guess. Because part of me does miss like talking about lots of stuff, but part of me also likes the idea of being kind of like soft retired from that now. Like, this is what I do, and we have a nice thing going on here. We do very well. We make good money. We have a big audience. We have a successful business. It's all kind of good. We all do our own things on the side, which is very important to me for my people, because I know what it's like to have to hold that shit in when I was at IGN, and it's just not good. It doesn't make you happy. Slingshots you out of places. So much to consider. Very thought-provoking, though. And I'm glad that you wrote in, Shane Bain. Can't wait to hear. Oh, no, that wasn't Shane Bain. That was Bruce, the genetic jackhammer rando. I'm sorry. Shane Bain, I'm still thinking about you. All right, my friends, let's get into some news items here. Our friend Jeff Keighley wrote on Twitter, Gamescom opening night live stream begins Tuesday, August 23rd. So we know that, at the Colon Messe in Cologne, Germany. As I've said before, the Colon Messe, I've been there twice. So big. It's scary when you're inside of it. And especially like after hours. It's like you're in like a fucking bad dream in that place. I can't believe how big that place is. Like, that it's actually one building. But nonetheless, and how many people go there? Oh my God, so many Europeans. But the Colon Messe, Cologne, Germany, August 23rd. And he says it'll be a night of game announcements, world premieres, and more on a huge stage. So let's think about this here. We have a few weeks to go until opening night at Gamescom. what do we think will be here? What do we want? What are we feeling? Chris, you have any ideas?
Man, I feel like maybe we're going to see some stuff that it's difficult to predict what will be there that we haven't seen, because like, what the hell could you possibly predict in that vein?
Yeah.
I don't imagine that we're going to see anything that we're necessarily expecting. Like, I don't imagine people should look forward to this with the expectation of maybe seeing something like, oh, we're going to see factions. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you're going to see anything like that. I think you're probably going to see a bunch of world premieres, which means, games that are about 4 years away. Or you're going to see maybe some stuff for some more recently delayed titles. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe Skull and Bones there in some capacity, just because it's not looking great for that game. So I feel like they just need to be out as possible. But for whatever reason, that's what came to mind. Not necessarily stuff that I'm looking forward to seeing or stuff that I want to see, but I imagine that we're going to see Skull and Bones for some reason. Just because, again, releasing a day before God of War is that's a hard sell, and they're going to need to really sell hard. So,
Dustin, thoughts?
Yeah, well, in the past, usually Gamescom is just a more disappointing E3. And
No doubt.
E3 was already very disappointing this year. I don't know. Disappointing doesn't feel quite like the right word.
Was it even E3 this year, though? You know what I mean? Like,
we'll say just June announcement season.
Yeah, June game month.
Right. So I don't have particularly high expectations. And Keeley's last joint was also the Game Awards was also, or no, not Game Awards. Summer Game Fest was overly hyped even by him in some ways. So my expectations, just going forward, this has been my philosophy for a while now, and it's worked out, that just keep your expectations to the absolute bottom. And then even if there's a few nice things, you can feel good about it. Like, it's like, oh, we got that because I expected nothing. So that's what I'm going in with this.
The thing about it too is that I'm kind of at this point, and I don't know maybe if this is just like my age or just like how much experience I have in this industry, but like at this point, everything that I'm looking forward to, I don't want to really see any more of it. Like, I don't want to see any more of Callisto Protocol. I don't really care to see more of Dead Space Remake because I've played Dead Space, so like it's redundant.
Right.
So all of these things that I am genuinely looking forward to, I kind of don't want to see at this thing. So all that's left is the stuff that I kind of don't care about, which I'm sure I'll see, or stuff that we don't know exists yet, which hopefully is interesting. But my expectations are just, hopefully there's at least one or two things that catch my eye in a way that's, that drives a little bit more interest than, whatever the hell happened at Summer Games Fest. I don't even know what the hell. That feels like 10 years ago already.
I know time is at a complete standstill. I will say that I think, well, I'll spring ahead here a little bit on our news, because Tom Henderson wrote over, Games Leaker wrote over on tryhardguides.com that he's hearing that Dead Island 2 is likely to be re-revealed later this year. He thinks the Game Awards is possible. Now, you'll note that I reported months ago on the show that I was hearing that the game could be re-revealed as soon as this summer. And I'm wondering if Gamescom is the right place for it, especially because it's a European game. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. I think that would be an interesting place to go with it. But I agree with Chris generally that it's hard to be able to really guess who would go or in what way. It's much easier when we're talking about publisher specific or console specific shows to be able to be like, okay, this is what we might expect. But I mean, it could be anything, literally anything at all. So it's hard to narrow that down for sure.
Yeah. At this point too, these could be like, you could see movies. You know what I mean? Like, we had that weird Black Adam trailer at one of the more recent game events. And you're just like, what the fuck what is going on? Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see a new Matrix movie or something shown at this thing. And it's just like, I don't know.
All right. PlayStation blog posted this pretty interesting article that I appreciate a lot, actually, called Indies Coming to PS4 and PS5 in August 2022. Here they show, let's see, 1, 2, 3, I think it's 6. Yeah, 6 different, bigger indie games that are coming to the console. I just wanted to ask you guys if any of these stick out to you. The options here are Gigabash, Cult of the Lamb, Roller Drome, Curse to Golf, I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, and Inscription. We've talked about some of these games on the show already, but Chris, do any of these look interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say anything about Roller Drone because we've already talked about how cool that game looks. But of these, the one that caught my eye most was Cult of the Lamb. And I don't know why exactly. I think it's the art style of it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah,
but,
that's exactly what it reminds me of too.
Yeah, but it's also, it doesn't look exactly quite like it. It's got its own spin on it. It's like semi 3D, and it's like Paper Mario 3D almost. And I dig the way it looks. I don't know what this game really is. I've only like skimmed the trailer because again, I've kind of been cautious lately just to not watch trailers in full anymore. Generally, just because I just find a lot of them they're really bad with restraint. But I'm digging the art style of this. I'm digging the soundscape of this, and that's really kind of 50% of what a game needs to get me in the door anyway. So it's a pretty safe bet that this is going to be one that I'm going to check out. Gigabash, I like the premise of, but
feels old school. That trailer, like it feels like a PS2 game, not in a bad way. It's like
War of the Monsters or something.
It reminds me. It reminds me a lot of War of the Monsters. The only thing that bothers me is just something about the way it looks. I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's. I don't know if it's the feeling of like, oh, I recognize this engine or something, but like there's something about it that looks mobile. Even just like the name of it and just the title font and everything about it. It's like, it's so much. I know it's like really like judge a book by its cover shit that I'm saying right now, but I can't help but think about that stuff when I'm watching a trailer like this. But I dig the style of it. I might check it out. But as for me, it's Cult of the Lamb for sure.
Yeah,
is the standout. For
people that don't know, Gigabash will be out by the time you hear this show. Cult of the Lamb will be out on August 11th. And Roller Drone, which Chris had brought up, we talked about it extensively last week. That's August 16th. That game looks fucking awesome. Like, I can't wait to play it. It looks so good. So I wanted to reiterate that. But Dustin, any of these games stick out to you? I know Inscription is one of them, but
yeah, Inscription is super cool. I played a good amount of it on PC. I actually think I was pretty close to the end, but I started to not enjoy the later half. But I still would recommend it overall. Like, it's definitely a very good game. If you're into card games and weird games, there's a lot of both in that. Cult of the Lamb, Chris, I played the demo on Steam Deck during the Steam summer demo thing.
No, it's gonna be bad news.
No.
Okay, good.
Which the thing about it is I'm pretty sure it's a roguelike, and I'm kind of over those, but I enjoyed it regardless. So
interesting.
I feel like I definitely want to check that out too. And then this Curse to Golf game.
This game looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm always intrigued by golf games. Ever since like Everybody's Golf, something about that game like switched something in my head that I'm always interested in various arcadey golf games. And this game looks really, really cute. Looks fun. I'm curious. I hadn't heard about it at all until I saw Thunderful Games. That's that publisher that did this SteamWorld series. I think they published those as well. So
yeah, I'm looking at their site now. Let's see games. This is a horrible layout.
The Gunk also.
Swordship. The Gunk. I remember that.
Maybe
they do some Lego games. Curse to Golf. Yeah, that's it. Let's see. I don't know any of these games. Lost in Random. I remember that one. Lost at Sea. Gigapocalypse.
Okay, they did do SteamWorld. I was
Harvest World. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going in backwards here. Yeah, SteamWorld Quest. There it is. SteamWorld. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. SteamWorld Dig. I liked that game on Vita a lot. Okay. For me, I think all these games have something interesting to say about them. I love the name I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. I think that is an awesome name for a game. And it looks pretty interesting because it's a visual novel, but apparently there's a card building, deck building aspect to it, which I'd be interesting to see.
You see those two combinations are like anti-me entirely.
Interesting. It sounds so unique. I mean, I just like weird hodgepodges like that.
No, it totally does. But like, I don't know, man. There's something about digital card games that makes me feel weird playing them. Like it's the same way I feel about most sports games, where it's like I could just play this. You know, if I really wanted to play this, I would be out playing this, or like I would be playing a card game with people in person.
Could be killing people with guns.
No, but that's exactly what I can't do that.
Yeah, please don't do that. But yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I don't know if I'm going to check that game out. It sounds interesting. Comes out August 25th. But Curse the Golf, yes, August 18th. This game looks very cool. It reminds me a little bit. I can't quite get the feel from the trailer about the gameplay, like if it's as active as it seems, but it reminds me a little bit of the David Crane game, A Boy and His Blob, just in the sense that it seems like you're doing things with like tools in the environment in real time to try to get by. And yeah, it might be something worth checking out. I know that things are soft right now. These are the games people should be supporting. I mean, I'm not going to speak to any of their quality, but if you're out there and you need a game to play, let's support some of these games if they look good to you. Definitely. Because it's so fucking horrible on the PSN right now and that was actually the topic I was going to write about and send to Dustin, like an audio file. It's so bad that I can't even believe it. Like I actually can't. It's worse than I ever thought it could get already. And I don't know.
It's rough everywhere. Like I go on all the storefronts on all my consoles, and I'm just like, even on Steam, and I'm just like, I re-downloaded Red Dead 2 because I was like, I guess I'll like, I don't know. I just have so little to play at this point that isn't in my backlog that I'm just, it is very off-puttingly slow. And
you have to dig through. I just couldn't. I went on the store yesterday on PS5. I couldn't believe I tried to count like how many of these games are shovelware. I would say half. Like you're digging through. It's just, and we're not even talking about like Chemco RPGs and all that kind of questionable shit. Like there's effort put into those games compared to this shit. And like somehow Chemco publishes a new JRPG like every month. No idea how that's possible. But that's even better than what's going on there. I know Brian, our friend Brian over at PlayStation Trophies and others, they're speaking out about this, but it's bad. So let's keep an eye on these good indies and support them where we can, because I'm sure the going, Super pErIlS of Baking sales are pretty soft, and we think we put out a pretty great game. We sold fewer than 5,000 copies, I think. And now I'm not trying to be offensive to anyone, but if we sold 5,000 copies or fewer with this platform and all of the rest, can you imagine how some of these games are selling? It's just,
oh my god, the Jumping Nuggets is a game that you can buy,
and that's just like and there's a bunch of them like Taco. That's the same. It's just I think there's like 60 of them, literally.
Yeah,
very good, Sony, and definitely, as we said last week, let's lower the barrier of entry.
Oh my god, there's so many jumping food.
That's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, like
weekly.
So, dude, Rollerdrome is going to enter that list, and it's just going to be amongst all these games. Now, of course, they're going to promote that somewhere else, but if you're looking for games based on chronology, good luck.
That's bad, man. That's way worse than I thought it was. Even Jumping Taco, Jumping Sushi.
Dude, I won't say what it is, what the games are, but I know an indie game that came to PlayStation consoles years ago, sold about 200,000 copies. A sequel came out to it, sold about 10% of those copies, in the last few years. And that was already beginning to happen because of the influx. It wasn't that the interest is less, it's that you can't find anything. There is no discoverability. It is so vital. Sacred Symbols is a huge PlayStation podcast, but by the nature of how many people play on PlayStation, it's irrelevant. You have to be able to find your games. There's so much to say about the PSN. It is fucked. Misspelled game names, awful writing in that's clearly just run through a translator on descriptions, low resolution images, videos that are buffering and artifacted to high hell. You can't tell what quality the game is. I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't know what the fuck you guys are doing.
It's bad, man. It's really bad.
Oh boy. Okay.
Holy hell.
I don't know if you guys have anything to say about this, but Annapurna, which is a growing publisher of indie style games, I want to say like more boutique style games. Think Edith Finch. They had a interactive showcase, and IGN listed all of the games that were announced. I don't know if any of these stuck out to you. Did you get a chance to look at this, Dustin? Did any of these look good to you?
First of all, I just have to recommend again What Remains of Edith Finch, now available on PlayStation 5 in 60 FPS, 4K. It's amazing. I put it on my top 25 list. So
free upgrade as well, unless you got it on PS Plus, apparently. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, for that. Appreciate it. Keep doing that to people, nickel and dime, everywhere they can. But the one game I wanted to point out from this, Colin, is The Lost Wild. just that it's a first person, seems like sort of survival horror game that takes place in somewhere where there's dinosaurs. So it feels like, think of it like how Resident Evil now it became a first person survival horror game. This feels like, in a way, when I watch the trailer, I'm like, it's like Dino Crisis, only there was no games in between. This is their version of like Resident Evil 7, only, not made by Capcom. Do you understand that comparison that I'm making?
Yeah, I think I get it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think publishers like Annapurna allow those weird spaces to be explored. I was actually researching them a little bit before the show just to see what they've been up to, and they're hiring for an internal studio as well. So these are all external games, but they're going to start making their own stuff too. And I wonder what that will look like. I must say that for me, that game Thirsty Suitors looks pretty cool. It's from the guys that made that game Falcon Age. I don't know if you remember that. I think that was a PSVR game. And it's described here as a, quote, an upcoming RPG that mixes elements of dating sims, turn-based battles, and skateboarding mechanics, end quote. It's pretty cool looking. I got to give a shout out to that. Maybe check that out. But anything for you, Chris, on this list?
Yeah, I thought Hohokum looked really cool.
Oh, that's an oldie. That's
yeah, I know. It's of the list of stuff that's out here. Like I didn't see, and obviously, like I'm looking forward to this patch of the Outer Wilds, just because it's a game that a lot of friends of mine they've been telling me to play, but I just find the performance on console to be a little iffy. So this will be like a huge alleviation to that roadblock. But I don't know. A lot of these games look like games that I wish I could. A lot of these games look like games that I wish I liked, but every time I jump into them, I'm just like, yeah, I don't hate them necessarily, but it reminds me of games like Lake. I don't know if you guys ever played Lake.
I remember that. But that's the one about the postal person, right?
Yeah. You're just like you're just like a girl who's like delivering mail, and it is cool. It's not bad, but it's also like, I feel, I don't know, like maybe I'm just never in the right headspace when I play these things, where I'm just kind of like waiting for something more substantial to happen. Almost like Firewatch, how like that game just kind of ends and you're just kind of like left wondering like what the point was. It's kind of how I feel with a lot of these. And until these things are out and I hear positive buzz about them, it's hard for me to make a jump on these artsy titles.
I'm glad you brought up Hohokum, because I was going to talk about it later in the show, because it is being released on PC. It's out by the time we're recording this, rather. Now, this is not a PC podcast, of course, but I'm noting this because this was a PlayStation published game. And this game was actually, Hohokum, for people that don't remember, was made by a one-off dev called Honey Slug over in Britain. And Santa Monica Studio at the time, known for God of War, of course, was incubating a shit ton of games. This was the time that they were incubating all the games from that game company internally at their studio. Giant Sparrow was there as well. And they were doing all these, that was when they were doing Bound and all this random shit that they were doing. And Hohokum was just one of those games, like Counter Spy. Remember that game? And so Hohokum was one of those games that they incubated. And just for nerds out there, it is interesting that somewhere along the line, Sony either relinquished or didn't own anymore the publishing rights to this game to get it on PC. Like someone did the work, I guess, necessary to revive what I would consider a fairly obscure PS3, PS4, and Vita game that wasn't particularly well received, and I don't think sold very well at all. So it's cool to see it revived. I hadn't thought about it in years. That came out when I was still at IGN. That's how old that game is. But and it was produced. Cool. Interestingly, that game was produced by Zach Wood, and Zach Wood is a friend of mine. I haven't talked to him in a while. He worked at Santa Monica for a long time. Zach Wood is the brother of Elijah Wood and looks just like him, and it's so interesting. Yeah. So you apparently could meet him, like depending on when you went to Santa Monica. Like sometimes Elijah Wood might be there. So, but I never got to.
So weird.
Yeah, I never got to meet him. Oh, I just got the bill for. Oh, yep. Here is the bill. No, this is not the bill. I was saying the bill for our legal stuff. This is a bill for our copyright stuff for our lawyers. Great. That's great. Okay. What else here? I already talked about Dead Island 2. Oh, Davin Ward wrote in. Thank you for writing in. It says, hey, CDC, hooray for Square. Finally announcing Tactics Ogre. I know Colin is excited for it, but what about Chris and Dustin? It seems like they aren't just pumping out a port and have actually put quite a lot of work into the remaster with features such as updated graphics, very controversial that, we'll talk about that in a minute, orchestral OST, Japanese and English VO, etc. What do you guys think this means for Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster, and what other classic Square games would you like to see this treatment for? So just to bring everyone up to date, I've been talking about it endlessly since it leaked via various international ratings boards, but Tactics Ogre Reborn is real. It comes to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on November 11th, as the initial leak suggested, and it is a port of the 2010 PSP title, Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, which itself was a port / remake / remaster of the 1995 Super Famicom game, Tactics Ogre. So now that we're all caught up, Tactics Ogre, as I reminded everyone a few weeks ago, is the prototype for Final Fantasy Tactics. There is no Final Fantasy Tactics without it. You could argue that there's no Fire Emblem without it as well, although Fire Emblem predates Tactics Ogre. Fire Emblem becomes more like Tactics Ogre, I think, later on. But nonetheless, certainly there would be no Final Fantasy Tactics without Tactics Ogre. And so this is a really important game. But as was brought up in the letter, the graphics are actually fairly controversial. They've done a lot of, I don't know what they've done. They've flattened out the pixels, I guess, and
they smoothed them out. Ugh.
So anyway, I'm really excited about this. November 11th, my most anticipated game for the rest of the year, bar none. And even surpasses the likes of Callisto Protocol, which I'm also really excited about in December. But Davin wants to know if you guys are going to play it. Dustin, let's start with you. Are you going to check out Tactics Ogre?
I'm intrigued by it, but I feel more compelled that I want to play Final Fantasy Tactics, especially because I bought a PlayStation 1 copy about a month ago now. But I was curious about this, Colin. The original Tactics Ogre, if you have it on PlayStation 1, you're looking at a cool $184 in value for that game.
Definitely. I bet you there were 50,000 copies of that game made or something like that. Like, seriously, we're talking about games didn't sell that many copies back in the day. We talk about games that are selling astronomical amounts of copies today. There was no game. There was nothing selling 10 million copies, 5 million copies. There weren't even that many copies being made, with very rare exception, unless it was like a Final Fantasy PS1 printing. Gran Turismo, maybe. I mean, it got to those numbers kind of, But generally speaking, in the PS1 era, especially for obscure games, you're talking about small printings, man. Really, really small printings for some of these games. And so I'm not surprised by that. I had it. I sold it. So.
Oh, yeah. That's what I always tell people. A lot of people ask me about collecting stuff, and I say, you have to evaluate how many copies of the game you think are out there and also what the demand is of it. So like Mario games, like actually right here, Mario Sunshine, there's a ton of copies out there, but everyone wants one. So eventually you probably can find that at a yard sale. You're not finding Tactics Ogre at a yard sale, most likely. That's when you're probably going to have to pony up the $184 if you want to own a copy. But anyway, back to the actual game. The smoothed over graphics, they're stinky. They're gross. I find it offensive. They should have an option that you can unsmooth the pixels out, just because I feel, I don't know. I know that it's like a remaster. It just feels so inauthentic in a lot of ways. And I just really don't like that look. But that wouldn't stop me from playing it or checking it out. But I want to say it out loud for anyone, any UPR people listening. We don't want the smoothed out graphics, or at least give us an option, because a lot of people, like you said, Colin, that was a big hang up when the leaks started coming out.
Yeah, people are hung up about the text as well as different. And I don't. Well, I'll say this because you're like, please Square. Like, they don't give a fuck what you think.
No.
I mean, obviously, because I just don't understand. Look what they did with the Pixel remasters. Like, the text boxes are heinous. They're heinous. Heinous.
Oh, man.
Not so bad here, but in those Final Fantasy games, like, I couldn't even believe it. I was like, whoa. Gotta slow down a little bit with all of this. Let's do it right. So I just don't think they care. And I think the reason they don't care is because I think most people, unfortunately, look at this and say, this looks better. Not the people that purists, but people like, if you showed your mom or dad Tactics Ogre running on Super Famicom, and then Tactics Ogre or on PSP, and then it's running on PS5 in this new smoothed out version, I would assume they would think this looked better.
Yeah,
I've heard comments when people who aren't involved with games, they see indie games that are pixel based, and they're like, why would you want to play a game that looks old like that? It's like,
do you have any idea how much harder it is to do that than it is to make 3D models that look decent? Making great pixel art is harder than making decent 3D art by far. By the way, on Push Square, the top comment with 10 likes, Colin will be happy. So that's funny on a random Push Square article for Tactics Ogre. All right, let's see here. Oh, this comes from the 6-Axis. I couldn't find that, which is a website. I couldn't find the original version of this, so I guess they found this statement somewhere. Sony is ditching PS5 accolades because people aren't using them, they write. And apparently, according to them, the statement from Sony is, quote, in the fall of 2022, the accolades feature on PlayStation 5 will no longer be supported. The feature hasn't seen the level of usage we anticipated, so we are refocusing our efforts. We encourage the community to continue to send positive messages to one another. And then 6-Axis kind of editorializes saying it was a good idea from Sony, intended as a PlayStation-wide way to engender more positivity through online multiplayer. So if people don't remember, you can give like different medals to people, like helpful, welcoming, good sport, and all of these different things. But this was obviously not going to be used. I don't know why they thought this was going to be used. It's similar to communities which were on PS4 and removed for PS5, where it just, you can tell that it's just not a thing that's going to get picked up. It seems like these ideas, like someone has this idea and they're like, yeah, let's just do that. But no one really thinks rationally about if that's the next permutation of PlayStation Network. Where are game side forums and user reviews and all that? No one want accolades. What are you talking about?
I think the problem, Colin, is they just didn't make them actually intended for people who play online. Like there could be an accolade for Call of Duty players, like didn't use a racial slur in the lobby.
Right.
That's an accolade.
Impossible.
You know, didn't mention fucking your mom. That's another award. Like they just needed to tailor them more for gamers, and they failed to do that.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris? Do you want to give any accolades before it's too late?
I totally forgot that this was even a thing. Like
Me too.
Because we definitely talked about it, right? Like there must have been a point where we talked about accolades, because there must have been a point in time where we talked about all of the features coming to PlayStation 5 and like what they meant and what we thought of them. But then ever since, and I'm not kidding, like ever since I opened my PS5 out of the box, I don't think the word accolades in reference to that system has even crossed my mind even slightly. I don't know where that option is in the menu. I've never seen it pop up. It's not like the cards where you can accidentally kind of stumble your way into them. It's just this completely hidden feature, which probably shows why it's not used, in addition to the fact that nobody wants to use it. But I mean, it is really confusing to me that so often you will find these features that nobody asked for, but then the features that everybody has been screaming for years about are just nowhere to be seen. It's always fascinating to like imagine that pitch meeting and who like greenlights it, who pitches it, whether or not they're still there pitching things that will one day again be just completely forgotten or patched out of the system entirely. It's just so strange. Accolades?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice idea.
You think competitive multiplayer people are going to want to compliment each other? That is wild.
Yeah.
That is astounding to me.
That's good insight. Yeah, I think this is, see, I would rather them just put in the work to go silent, not update very much, and just do big, meaningful updates. Not having to add these little things around the edges, but I really believe that every game should have its own page on PlayStation Network with a whole slate of options, including forums and all the things that can be accessed directly from your PlayStation 5. Like that would be, and of course your PlayStation app and all that, but that would be dope. Just put all your effort into that. Don't worry about accolades.
I know on the Series X, the Xbox ecosystem has something kind of like that, where every game has a page and like people streaming that game or whatever.
Yeah, PSN has that too, where you go to the page and you can see if people have recently streamed videos and all of that, but it's not, and like which
like
one of your friends played it and stuff, but it's not Steam. And I know that we don't want to necessarily replicate only what Steam does, but it's better than PSN. So
yeah.
Matt Vigo wrote in and said, "Hey boys, Sony announced this week that they are discontinuing the Accolades feature on PSN. Got me thinking, are there any other features in PlayStation's history that were removed from lack of popularity that you can think of? Obviously, Sony is no stranger to trying out and running away from new hardware peripherals, but I could not personally think of any strictly software features. I can think of quite a few, actually. Dustin, do you want to try to spout out some?
Well, I have a personal experience with one, and that is the Linux feature on PlayStation 3, which I remember thinking I wanted to do that when I bought a PS3, never did it. But then there was a lawsuit involved where if you signed up for the class action lawsuit, you got a nice check from Sony for $12.
Nice.
For the removal of that feature that they advertised. Very interesting.
It costs more money to write that check than it.
Yeah.
That's so insane.
Linux is a big one. I think too about how PS3 was fully backwards compatible at first, and that was turned off. Remember, you could play PS2 games, and then it couldn't play them anymore.
Well, they didn't lock it out. It was just certain devices that they sold no longer had the hardware built.
Yeah, that's true. But I was, that's true. It's a little different. And then I was thinking of, we were talking about communities, which were taken out. And also, if you like just different interesting little changes with the storefront running off of browsers and doing all those kinds of things. Some of these things were obviously run away from for good reason, but there are actually quite a few things like printer functionality on PS3 and all sorts of stuff. Like they just started cutting and not supporting like a bunch of things after a while because no one was using them. Okay. It's interesting in what you thought about this tweet from YouTube Gaming. It says, gather round, Tarnish. Let's look at the breakdown of how Elden Ring garnered 3.4 billion video views in 60 days, making it one of the biggest launches ever on YouTube. Dustin, you are an Elden Ring super fan. What do you think about this wild success? They share a lot of stats. It's really interesting. And I must admit, I was one of those people, not that I was looking for lore or reviews. I was looking for help. I was desperately seeking help. But the launch views comparison they share is fascinating. Now, times have changed a little bit with most of these games, although not all of them. So during the same period of time that Elden Ring garnered 3.4 billion views, Skyrim, so that's 2011, 456 million. Breath of the Wild, so that would be 2017, that's 638 million. Super Mario Odyssey, that's 2017 as well, 828 million. Red Dead Redemption 2 is 2018. And that's 1.4 billion. GTA 5 would be 2013. That's 1.9 billion. And then Elden Ring. So big jump up there. What do you make of it? I find this so interesting. This game has really captured the imagination of so many people. And it is so interesting what it says about players and potential gamers. Because I can't imagine the people I hear talking about playing this. I'm like, how are you playing this? Yeah, I hate to be that way, but I'm like, how are you playing that? And yet it's happening. So talk to me about it.
So the thing about Elden Ring, when you kind of break it down, is that it has so many angles in which you can create content about the game that I feel like this makes perfect sense. You can do guides because this game is very difficult and very open-ended. So a lot of people are going to be looking for guides, like you mentioned, Colin. There is a very vague story and extremely vague lore that if you really dive in, you can find more. So you have people like VatiVidya who does lore videos and many others. So there's that angle of it. There's class guides and people that show you how to do like different classes and builds and stuff like that. There's the entertainment value of people fighting bosses and doing commentary and stuff like that. There's just so many different ways that someone could make content about this game that is entertaining and appealing to people who are interested in this game, that it makes sense from that angle, in addition to its meteoric success outside of the content space. So yeah, this is cool. I'm glad to see it. It's neat when there is a like secondary community of people that benefit from something. Like I think about the Destiny community on YouTube, that there's like people that make their living through this community and through this game. That's obviously a risky endeavor. If something happens to that game, then you're going to have to pivot and stuff like that. But I think it's cool that people can become masters of one game and be able to share that with the world and be rewarded for that. That's really neat.
What do you think of this, Chris, as a prominent YouTuber? Interesting to see these numbers being stacked by a game that's so inaccessible, and yet its inaccessibility, not only by gameplay, but in lore and direction and all the rest, is probably part of the reason why it did so well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's obtuse nature and the way that everything's kind of kept from you and the way that the game just sort of doesn't tell you as much as other games tell you is what kind of captivates. It's what captivates. I know that's when I think of like the first video games that I used to play that's what captivated me about them, was that like I didn't know what to do or where I was going. I had no idea what the fuck was going on in Majora's Mask when I started it. I was like, what am I doing? There's no markers, there's no nothing. But it just sort of drives you to get involved with it. It drives you to pay attention deeper. It drives you to really explore in a way that you normally wouldn't if you just had like a big destination marker on your map and you just headed straight to it. It's something really fascinating to see this game kind of like break out into the mainstream in the way that it has. Like I just adults in my life that have no business even knowing what this game is have expressed interest to me in maybe trying it. And I'm like, you don't know what the hell you're getting into, first off. But that's amazing that it's even remotely having that effect on people who don't play, really. And the fact that I think the fact that the story is so hands-off makes the game very, very streamable. There's not a lot of dialogue that like players have to like, sit and like quietly pay attention to. Like you can really, it's a very conversational game. Like you can talk to your chat if you're streaming this thing the whole time and not be talking over anything important. It's really all about the experience. And then like there's obviously like a whole backseating element to it that's like frustrating, but also kind of it's a fun back and forth. It's I don't know. There's a special sauce here that I think is inevitably going to shape the industry in some way. Like everybody's going to be looking at the success that this game had and the stranglehold that this game has over YouTube and Twitch and just the general public. Like people are still tweeting about Elden Ring. I see shit about it all the time still. And there's no way other publishers aren't going to be looking into that. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we're going to get some games that are a little bit more like it, which, and hopefully they're more like it in the ways that it should be. Not that every game needs to be a Soulsborne, but that maybe more games need to let you breathe a little bit. Yeah. Maybe more games need to let you just kind of soak in where you are and like actually let you feel like you are in this place, as opposed to look at all of the budget that we put into this thing. You can look at all the things that you can do. We don't want you to miss any of it, so we'll put big markers on all of it so you know exactly where to go. It's I don't know. I think it's fucking fascinating, the impact that it has.
I think a really good and interesting I don't know if this would really work, but I think it would. Like a design philosophy for open world games could be simply turning everything on and off. In other words, I wouldn't mind if there were to be a way for Elden Ring to play with guidance. But the idea that you don't have to play it like that is kind of cool. And I know that games have scalable HUDs and all of the rest, but it's not quite the same. Like a game like that was what was so attractive about Elden Ring, was the true mystery of it, true danger of it. There is no game that feels quite like that. I'll admit that as someone that really didn't vibe with it after 20 hours. I struggled with it so much, but it's like, there's no doubt that this game is fucking scary to play compared to a lot of different games. Yeah.
It's been a long time. I just, it reminds me of when I was a kid and people would tell me like, oh, did you know that if you break over the side of the invisible wall on this map, there's a whole nother map that like, it's just like, what? There's another map out there? And of course it's not. It's just all these like wives' tale or these like folklore, these like legends that you would tell people on the playground or whatever about some video game that you had because there was no internet to spoil you. And what's amazing about Elden Ring is the internet is there to spoil you. It is as capable of spoiling you as it ever has been. And yet there's still so much about it that I don't know. And that's a beautiful part of open world design that has been, it's not even necessarily new. It used to be a very fundamental core of it. When I think of Shadow of the Colossus, I think of the same thing where it's like you start that game and you don't know where the fuck to go. All you know is that if you press one of the buttons that the game doesn't tell you to press, by the way, your sword goes up and then the sunbeams guide you to a specific place. And the sunbeams don't even guide you to that place unless you're standing in the sun. Like, it doesn't tell you any of that. You just find it out as you go. And that's another reason why I think that game is so special. And it would be nice to see design cues like that moving forward. But I do think I think you're right. It would be nice to have that as an option for other games. Hopefully, if Ubisoft gets into this style of design, maybe that'll be something that they focus on, which would be a nice change of pace for them, especially because that's a game that's a studio that I think, or a publisher that I think sorely needs a design shift like this.
Yeah, it's strange because I'll be the first to admit that I don't want Elden Ring to change for me at all. I want it to be exactly what it wants to be. But there's also no doubt that if they gave me more options, that I would have stuck with it longer. But that removes some of the... See, I think for some people, even this idea that you can kind of alter the difficulty for yourself removes the je ne sais quoi of the game, I think that's what they have kind of come to terms with it from over a long period of time, is we just don't do it. We just don't. Like, this is it. Whatever it is what it is. And there's something to be respected about that. So I think they found something so special and interesting, and I would say rare, because obviously Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, none of these games were anything. That's why when Elden Ring was coming, I'm like, who really cares? I mean, I'm sure it'll sell 5 million copies, and people that love Souls games are going to love it. I'd be lying to you if I think a lot of people would be lying to you if they said that they thought it was going to sell 20 million or whatever the fuck it sold, where it's going to be like better selling than Call of Duty this year. I would say you're a liar if you thought that was going to happen, but I would certainly tell you that I had no idea it was going to do more than, its usual 5 million or something like that. So and I would love to know at Bandai Namco what their mock reviews said and what their anticipations were for the game, what their pre-sales numbers were. There's a lot this is why GDC is so interesting. And maybe they'll have a thing about it one day where they talk about what they were learning about the game before it came out, because they must have had indications that it was going to be big. They were probably the only ones that were not surprised. But when you see a game on the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, all these different places being talked about, that's why I'm saying, like, are people going in? It's like when 311 released Amber as a single, my favorite band, 311. Amber's a good song, but it doesn't sound anything like them. And it was like their biggest adult contemporary radio hit in years and years and years. And so people went and bought the album From Chaos expecting that, but it's a rap rock record. Right. So I wonder if a similar thing is happening. Like, how many copies of Elden Ring were played by people who couldn't hang? But then you look at the platinum numbers and you're like, holy shit. This game has just totally sucked millions of people in. I don't know. I'm going on and on, but I find it quite interesting. I wanted to note really quickly, this is just a passing note, but Koch Media. So Koch Media, that's Koch, a European entity that is owned since 2018 by Embracer, but Koch Media has existed since the 90s. They've renamed themselves Plaion, Plaion. And the CEO, who also founded Koch Media, Clemens Konraditz, said, quote, "Over the last 28 years, we have built an incredibly strong business partnering with many of the best known names in the industry. Since joining the Embracer Group in 2018, growth has accelerated, and we have become increasingly diversified to reflect the evolving nature of our business in terms of not only content, but also of geography. As we continue our expansion across the globe, we have chosen our new name to better portray who we are and the journey that we're taking." I hate PR nonsense. Hate it. You're renaming yourself because Koch Media is a horrible name for a publisher. And that's why you're renaming yourself, and you should just say it. And I think there was something in here about how people didn't know how to say it as well, because that's even a problem in the United States with the Koch brothers, the prominent conservative libertarian rich guys. It's not Coke, it's Koch. And I remember when I first saw their name in print like 20 years ago, I was like, oh, the Koch brothers. No, it's Koch.
Yeah. So
this is just, a passing piece of information. Now, it's worth noting that Plaion, formerly Koch, owns Volition, Dambuster, Warhorse, Flying Wild Hog, Free Radical, Vertigo, and a few other studios. So I think the first time we're going to see this, I would imagine the first time we're going to see this logo appear is in Saints Row, but we'll have to find out. And maybe they're getting that announcement out there to begin with. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case you see the name floating about. Guys, War God Zeus of Child has come to Xbox. Kotaku writes about it. I don't know if you saw it, but basically on the Xbox store, a blatant God of War shite ripoff was published. And it's so funny. It's been taken down. I went on Discord actually when I saw it, and I'm like, people, if you should go buy it. Like, it's $4. Like, go buy it. They're going to take it down. And that might be your only hope to ever have access to it. And they might even just cut that off as well and refund everyone. But it uses literally Kratos, like a model of Kratos fighting enemies. If you guys want to go look at it in like an arena, but the animations are so fucking bad. Like he's floating on the ground, like not even really walking. It's hysterical. And the description originally read, War God Zeus of Child is a great war game. Destroy all enemies and creatures with the Zeus War Gods of Challenge. Kill them all with your gun. Launch attacks with various combos. Reach the highest monster kills without dying. Feel the power of the Warning God. So also problems on Xbox as well. Dustin, what do you think about? What do you think about the new God of War game, War God Zeus of Child?
Yeah, well, I will say I think that Xbox at least has a bit of a better direction because it seems like their, we'll say, ultra indie games or whatever are kind of in its own separate section instead of just mixed in with everything else, as far as I know. But you think there would at least be some level of vetting done to everything published on the store. At least that would be my philosophy if I was in charge of any of these major platform holders. It's that, like, we got to check everything because, sure, like this is God of War, but someone could publish, pornography, any kind of heinous things, and then sell it, and that would potentially be on you. So surely there should be some kind of check. But when this gets through somehow, it clearly shows that there is. I mean, do you think someone at Microsoft somewhere looked at this and thought, well, that'll be all right, and hit go? It's like, no, clearly, I don't know. The fact there's no vetting is insane. Well, and I wonder if there will be now.
Michael Peakin wrote in about this and said, so are we all playing War God Zeus of Child this weekend to prepare for God of War? I just love that name, War Gods, Zeus of Child.
Zeus.
In all seriousness, how is this game being sold on Xbox platforms, he asks. And it goes to your question. The answers aren't good because there's only two possible answers as far as I'm concerned. It got through someone who didn't know who Kratos was. That's possible. Scary that they're working in the games industry, but possible. The second thing is that no one's checking. And while Sony's talking about lowering the bar for accessibility to the PSN, I don't know if Microsoft has to worry about that with Xbox. So, and I give a lot of credit to Microsoft with Xbox. Actually, we like that store best for our games because it seems like they're the only store dedicated to cross functionality and like forever keeping your things as they are, as opposed to maybe removing licenses and doing all the kind of shady shit that happens on other platforms. Think about those that sold, say, Wii digital games. Those games are just gone. They're just forever gone. If you were playing, what was it, World of Goo? Was that one of them?
Yeah, it was.
And what was that game? Didn't Spielberg do a game?
Boom Blocks.
Boom Blocks, right. Boom
that was
Blocks.
A disc release, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. It was a disc release. Okay.
Boom Blocks.
Chris, you have anything to add about War God, Zeus of Child?
Well, I love it because like in the start screen, it says God of Warning is the name of the game. So it's just like, it's all a fucking mess. But this might be the funniest thing I've ever seen. Like
he's backing away from the enemies, like, but he's just floating.
He's doing like a shimmy, but I love this really shitty model of Kratos. I love how the first thing is also like made with Unity. It's like, all right, cool. We're in for a treat.
Yeah, we're in for a real romp here. So yeah, that game is taken off the Xbox store. I hope some people bought it. I would be interested to know if it will remain in your downloads list or if they're just going to remove it and refund you. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just so funny because either option of how it got to the store, not good.
Yeah.
Actually, I would argue that it's better that it got on the store with no one checking than it would have like gotten by the goalie. I mean, that's easily a better outcome. Anyway, War God, Zeus of Child, rare game. Maybe we'll get a physical release one day. Guys, I had to bring this to your attention. Push Square is writing about it, but it's being covered everywhere. There's this dog skin for Call of Duty that I first of all think is so cute. I requested Micah buy it. She plays Call of Duty. I requested that she buy it. However, she said she would be uncomfortable being shot as this dog.
That's what I was thinking.
But apparently they just straight up ripped this design off from someone. And Chris, I was wondering if you read into this and what you think about this Floof Fury Tracer Pack bundle in a now deleted trailer, apparently, that's been mirrored elsewhere. And what I would constitute, if people want to go check out the images for themselves, obvious plagiarism. I mean, not even close.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
There's really no question about it. It's everything about the if there is anything transformative about the official asset versus the original concept that was stolen by this guy, it's so minute or minor that it barely even matters, because it really is just a straight up thing, and they've admitted so basically by taking the trailer down. It's wild that this kind of stuff can happen. Like, it's so weird, like just the checks and balances. Like, how do you, like, what are you doing as an artist at this company, right? That you're like, oh, I gotta make a skin. That's a good one. You know, like to get through the vetting process of being hired and to also do that kind of thing is wild to me. But there's no doubt about it. It's like completely stolen. There's no excuse. It's wild. It's fury.
I feel like I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to want to blame Activision and Call of Duty, sort of, because probably what happened is there was an artist that was tasked with coming up with this skin, saw this skin and just complete ripped it. And so I feel like it's on that person, but at the same time,
for sure, yeah.
Obviously it's on that person and thus on Activision, since they hire and employ that person. But at the same time, it seems like they just kind of took down that trailer and was trying to be like, act like it never happened. It's like, no, they should have either reached out to that artist. They maybe could have come to an agreement.
I think they have since reached out, but we don't know what the agreement is as of the time of recording.
Okay. Interesting. But yeah, it just feels weird that it's just like delete the trailer. So I wonder what will happen, because I think, Colin, what Micah said is true, is that if I saw this doggo running around in Call of Duty, it would be hard for me to shoot at.
But that might be an advantage. See, this is how you can turn the whole thing around on you. Like, there might be some gun shy people out there. I was like, this is adorable. But it is so funny, to Chris's point, like how blatant the copying is. Like, for instance, the original design has a shoulder pad, like a rollerblading shoulder, or I'm sorry, elbow pad over their arm, and it's like, come on, in the model. Everything, same boots, color, same pants, same scarf,
same clothes, same color scheme, same everything. Yeah. And yeah, I want to be clear. It's like, it's not. There's a lot of fan-made content made for Call of Duty. You know, like, a lot of people are, and any huge game, really, there's like a lot of fan art, there's a lot of YouTube stuff, there's all sorts of content is being made. It's not really all that possible for Activision to know every single piece of fan-made media that exists out there. And even if they were, you know, even if such a thing were to, like, you know, let's say this person comes with this pitch for like, oh, I want to do a dog skin. You're probably not going to think that much about it. So it's not necessarily their fault, but like at the same time, it's very clearly this guy's fault. And I just don't know what this guy was thinking. I don't know how you think you could get away with this is more my angle. Like, how do you not expect this super fan of Call of Duty who made a fan skin not to talk about this?
Totally. That's my big thing too. That's like the sociopathy of certain people where they don't think it through. Even if you're a fundamentally dishonest person and this is what you want to do, you can't get away with it. You're not going to get away with it. You can't possibly steal something and it ends up in Call of Duty and no one is going to notice that. I don't know. Yeah, very weird indeed. And especially having that sort of access to a game like that and then ruining your access to it by copying something when you're making, I don't know, man. There's very many layers to people throwing it all away. Okay. Couple more things here. Cyberpunk Edgerunners is the new upcoming animated series coming to Netflix next month, based on the Cyberpunk game, which itself is based on the Cyberpunk role-playing series. It'll be 10 episodes, and it's a, quote, a story about a street kid trying to survive in a technology and body modification obsessed city of the future that, of course, is Night City. Dustin, I wanted to ask, as we're getting closer with this new footage, what do you think?
Dude, I think this looks awesome. And it's made by a really great studio, Studio Trigger, who I think they're most famous probably for Kill la Kill on Netflix. If you've ever, well, it's available to watch on Netflix now, and they've done a bunch of other stuff, but they have a very unique anime style that is very uniquely Studio Trigger. And so I think this looks great. In fact, in some way, well, I don't know. The story for Cyberpunk was not bad, but I think that in some ways this can live alongside Cyberpunk and maybe even, I don't want to say redeem the game, but it will, I don't want to say better either, but I think this could be really cool is all I'm trying to say. And I'm going to check it out for sure. 10 episodes. That's an easy. You can do that in like a night or two. So I'll check it out.
Cool. What do you think, Chris?
It's only 10 episodes, so I'm in. I like it. The thing that a lot of anime, the thing that keeps me from a lot of anime is somebody's like, hey, you should watch One Piece. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I look it up and it's like 200,000 episodes and half of them are bad, apparently. So it's like, no. But for 10 episodes, it's like, yeah, I'll jump into that. I think it looks good. I think it looks, I appreciate the fact that it is proper. Well, I guess I don't know if it's proper 2D because you can make anything look like 2D, but like this looked, in comparison to the Tekken trailer that we got last week, it looks a lot more traditional anime than
Right.
what I'm used to seeing from a lot of modern stuff. So I'm into it. I also just like Cyberpunk a lot. So
The game or the aesthetic?
both.
Yeah.
I think like I dig the aesthetic. I like the soundscape. And I think the game was great.
Yeah, I really like the game. We'll talk more about that in a little while when we get to what we're playing. Dustin, let's stick with you for now, though. I want to apologize. The NieR thing we were talking about is a mod, apparently. For people that weren't around last week, we were talking about this mysterious part of NieR Automata that was found and circulating that seemed to reference unknown lore going back to, I don't know, Drakengard or whatever the fucking random games that they used to make before NieR, and it ended up being a mod. But I'm kind of fascinated by this because it seemed the NieR community must be pretty well tuned to games compared to most communities. It's a pretty nerdy community. It's surprising that something like this can get past them. Well, what do you think?
Right. I think that one of the sticking points is that people didn't think that modding was possible yet on NieR. Like no one figured out, but it wasn't like, oh, you can go to this website and download mods for NieR Automata. Like it wasn't quite cracked open fully yet. And so clearly someone figured it out and was able to spoof everybody with this video. But in some ways, I think it's kind of fun that they did this and that they kind of kept quiet for just long enough that it created this frenzy, but then they didn't let it go too far. Well, I don't know. Too far is arguable depending on the person, but I think it was in good fun. Probably if I had stayed up 3 nights trying to figure this out like some people did, I would not feel that way. But
oh wow, people were really doing that.
Well, I just know that there was like subreddits that were going nuts trying to figure out like, is this possible? Is this some kind of tease? Did they update the game? Is anything different with the files? Like people were really going down the rabbit hole with this one, and then it ends up being some dude with a mod. So
interesting. All right, final piece of news before we get into what we're playing. Small piece of news. Behavior Interactive announced a new game that's actually written about on PlayStation blog called Meet Your Maker. This game looks pretty cool. I was wondering, especially you, Chris, what you think of this, because it looks like a Minecraft meets Doom kind of game. I don't know how else to really describe it. I'm wondering what you think of this.
Yeah, it looks like a first-person shooter where you could kind of build your own dungeons. And it seems like you have control over AI spawns and like what types of AI spawns in what order and like maybe potentially aggressive aggression levels. It's basically like a map maker or a level maker for a Doom-style shooter. And you can place booby traps and all this kind of stuff. I think it looks cool. I think the name is a bit... Like, when I first saw the name of the game, it didn't really tell me really anything. I get what they're doing with you can make your...
It's a double entendre. Yeah.
It is, but I don't think it stands out particularly all that much. I wouldn't be surprised to see this kind of thing glaze over people's eyes if they see it on a list. But I recommend everybody check out the trailer because it does look really interesting. Obviously, first-person shooters all hinge on how well they actually play once you're actually in the game and actually moving around. There's so many different takes on what makes a good shooter a shooter, and there's so many different interpretations of heavy aim and movement and strafing speed and aim down sights and all that stuff. But assuming that it's even remotely decent at all of those things, the addition of a map maker with the ability to kind of like make your own dungeons and potentially participate in other people's dungeons, I think that's awesome. It's a really cool premise. And I'll definitely be checking it out.
What do you think?
I also like the style of it, I should say, too.
Yeah, I do, too. Well, that's why I kind of reminded me of you was just that they chose a demonic, doom, dark, gritty aesthetic that they could have chosen almost any aesthetic, but that's what they chose. So I think that there is some intention there. But what do you think of this, Dustin? It's worth noting we haven't seen Behavior Interactive in some time. They haven't made a game in years. So this is what I guess they've been doing. But what do you make of this new game, Meet Your Maker, which PlayStation is writing about? So I think that they're going to maybe try to get behind this one.
Yeah, well, Behavior is interesting just in that they've been really toiling away at Dead by Daylight for so many years, doing updates and adding to that game. In a lot of ways, to me, that game always surprised me that it's really been chugging along as like I don't know if sleeper hit is the right word, because it's weird. I don't know anyone who really plays it. I think Jimmy plays it because he's into horror stuff, but I don't feel like it's a big game. But then I like see the numbers and stuff on Twitch, and clearly Dead by Daylight is huge. And so to see them coming out with a game that has crafting elements and multiplayer, like that seems like already a recipe for success for them. The trailer, it's weird in that this game is intriguing to me and also kind of off-putting just because I'm not really into crafting games so much and stuff like that, is particularly like multiplayer, roguelike crafting, all that kind of stuff. But this one does look interesting, particularly the art style, I think is really cool. So this is one we'll definitely keep our eye on.
Well, it's worth noting, I'm just reading about it here, that in the spring of this year, they announced that they've had 50 million players play the game. And they're apparently working on a potential visual novel spinoff of the game, because that was what the audience voted on, what they wanted. So
yeah, that's wild. But before we get into what we're playing, please. I know this isn't PlayStation oriented, but this is kind of
I know what you're going to say. Yes, please.
And this is as of the last, literally in the last 24 hours, this dude who was going after the Halo 2 Moist Critical Challenge for 20K managed to do it. Took him 2 weeks to do this, but he did the Halo 2 LASO Zero Death run, and it's crazy how big of a deal that is. It's like the last record that existed for that game.
Who was right about a Halo thing and who was wrong? Just think about that.
Oh, wow.
It took him 2 weeks to do this, constantly trying.
He's dead now, actually. That was the last thing he ever did.
Yeah. He's dead. He's a dead person.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much RNG that like you really have to just continuously try to do that. Like and not a lot of people. I tried for a little bit. I spent 6 hours on the first level, and I was like, I can't fucking, this is, and I am okay at most Halo games. I am very good at Halo 2. So props to that guy. That guy's a fucking legend.
Yeah. Nice little payday. Did the person who put the bounty out say anything?
Not yet, but I'm sure like it's critical. I'm sure he's going to do it.
$20,000. Nice piece of change. Good for him.
Yeah.
Good thing he wasn't too braggadocious and started up in the ante, but
yeah, right.
That would have just gotten. I think if you put too much money on it, then it gets way too many people involved. Like if you put 50 or 100,000 on it, then people are going to do it. Like they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get into what we're playing. Chris, let's stick with you. It says here you're playing Multiverses.
Yeah, I I played Multiverses for I gave it the old college try. I played it for about maybe like an hour and a half. It's a platform fighter, so I think I've played more than enough of it to kind of assess like how I feel about it. It's definitely the best Smash Brothers ripoff that I've seen, but it still feels so woefully behind what Smash Brothers is that it's not it, man. Like it's not it. I don't like playing as Superman fighting, like punching Velma relentlessly in the face while LeBron James runs up to hit me with a basketball. It's just such a fucking fever dream, and everything feels floaty. There's something about, but not in like a Smash Brothers consistently floaty type thing. There's something in this game that I can't quite put my finger on. I don't know if you've played it, Dustin, or not.
Just a little bit.
I cannot, for the life of me, understand the weight of anything in this game, because it feels like sometimes you're in the air and then you fall down really slowly, and then other times it feels like you plummet and there's no rhyme or reason to like when these things happen. The jumping feels very like it's almost like if you're jumping and you're off stage, you move on the horizontal axis before you go vertical. So it just like, it feels like this weird slide, like you're sliding on these invisible platforms every time you jump. It's just this very disconcerting, like uneasy feeling game that, again, it just, the more people try to attempt games like this, it just fascinates me, because I cannot think of another example of a genre that was invented by a studio that is still the best possible example of that genre to this day. Like, I can't think of anything that applies to. There are shooters out there that are better than Doom. There are RPGs out there that are surely better than the first RPG. There are racing games that are clearly better than the original Gran Turismo. But for whatever reason, there is still not a platform fighter that comes anywhere near Smash Brothers, and it's so interesting. I don't know what they're doing over at Nintendo.
It's quality. I think it's just a total focus on quality. Because what's interesting about that is that the same studio has not made the game the entire time. So
I know
it's the same. It's totally different. It went to Bandai Namco at some point, and that's actually when it became bigger than ever. So
yeah, it's just so confusing.
I really think I really, Chris, think it's a focus on just production quality. Like, this is a bread and butter game. We don't fuck this game up.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I guess that must be. And also, one thing I'd like to say too, the user interface, the UI for this game, absolute ass. Like it's ripped straight off of Fortnite. It's got those disgusting sidebar with all like the boxes and like ooh, look how quirky this gear icon is, even though it's just a gear icon. It's like, why is that there? It reeks of like free to play mobile, and I'm sure it is, again, definitely the better clone of Smash Brothers. But
yeah, what was the other one?
To play, Nickelodeon All-Stars something.
What about that game Brawlhalla? That's different, right? That's a crossover fighter too, isn't it?
It is, but at the very least, there's something about that one that doesn't feel as egregious. I don't know what it is exactly. I think it's the 2D art style that it has going for it that makes it feel a little bit more permissible to me, because it doesn't feel like it feels like it's trying to be an example of the genre as opposed to kind of cloning. Like there's something. Maybe it's that simple. Just like the 3D assets in this game make it feel so much closer to Smash that I feel like, if I'm playing this game, I might as well just be playing Smash. Yeah. Like, what am I doing here? Yeah, just because I can be Super Saiyan Shaggy in this fever dream, like acid trip.
Some people got mad at me for saying that WB, like, people don't love WB. And I just want to reiterate, Warner Brothers is a collection of things that exist because of the nature of business. Nothing brings these characters together. It's not a universe. It's not a universe. I don't know why that's offensive to some people. Lord of the Rings and Batman only go together because of the parent company owning them. And you can say the same thing about Nintendo, but it's not that simple. And that's why I said that there is something about Olimar and Mario that makes sense together. And there's something, there just is in Pokemon Trainer and Luigi.
The closest Warner Brothers has ever come to feeling like it's had any kind of cohesive identity was with like the Animaniacs show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where like they lived
on the set.
Because they lived in the Warner Brothers, like the water tower, and it took place on the lot. So it's like, that's cool. And people, like, there was definitely like some feeling of like a brand cohesiveness within that space. But Arya Stark doesn't fit in with the Animaniacs.
It's absurd. It's totally absurd. I mean, that's part of the reason why I think Nintendo, because it all works and because we understand it, and it's a 25-year-old idea at this point since the N64 game came out, basically, that they kind of are working on that premise. So they get you don't have to even worry about that. Then people focus on the game. I just don't think other universes have the same advantage. And the one thing I want to say real quick before I kick it over to you, Dustin, to talk about what you're playing is, someone wrote into me and sent me a link of Tom and Jerry, and my instinct, I don't know why I felt that this was true. I didn't know that it was true. And I'm like, they can't possibly be friends, right? And because it's Tom and Jerry as one character, and someone showed me the move list, and it's fucking awesome. They're fighting each other just like I thought they were, and like Tom misses and hits like the character instead, or Jerry like tries to blow up Tom and he blows up the character instead. I must say, regardless of the quality of the game, that is a brilliant interpretation of those characters. Love it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fantastic ideas, but like playing it feels horrible. Like I love that idea, and there's like all these different, like even just the idea of like Shaggy going Super Saiyan, like that meme that was going around. Like I think that's funny to include, and just the way that Tom and Jerry move around, and like there's the same thing is true for a lot of other characters. It's just a matter of just moving in that 3D space feels so gross to me. And maybe it's just me. I'm sure a lot of people really love this game, and like God bless. There's like a lot of great ideas there, but this needs at least another year and a half in the oven, in my opinion, before it's even close to Smash Brothers. And even then, you might as well just play Smash Brothers, really.
I agree. I love Smash. I haven't played it in a long time, but I'm a day-to-day man myself all the way. Ice Climber secondary, Mario secondary. But I love DDD. Day-to-Day is his name in Japanese, and I'll always call him that because I first was exposed to him in the Japanese version of the Wii game. And they would say Day-to-Day when you would select him instead of DDD, which I think is so cool. So he'll always be King Day-to-Day to me. Actually,
where's he at?
Right
there
here.
He is.
Hey, you know why I hate that name though? Do you remember a comedian by the name of Carlos Mencia?
Oh yeah, he was the one that got Joe Rogan like ruined his life, right?
Yeah. His catchphrase was DDD.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not even joking, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah,
what a terrible comedian. I
want to just say this real quick for people that aren't familiar with that. That if my memory serves me, that's an early YouTube viral thing, like that edited video of the confrontation of him at the set and talking to George Lopez and all that stuff. Like that video that went around, I feel like that was like early YouTube.
Oh, sure.
And
absolutely.
I remember it was brutal. Oh, my God. That's when we still only knew Joe Rogan. That was pre-Joe Rogan experience and everything. We only knew him from
I think Fear Factor.
From Fear Factor and News Radio. Right. That's it. So, yeah. All right. So let's go to you. You're playing games all from 1998. I'm curious. Live Alive's actually even older than that. But I'm curious what's going on in your world here.
So I mentioned last week, Mega Man Legends. Finished it out. I'm done. There's a lot of side stuff I could have done, but I'm more interested in playing the second one, but it felt wrong to just go straight to the second one. And the thing that I will say about playing these old games right now, which I feel like right now with them being very little in the AAA space new, this is the perfect time to go back and play some of these old games, since that's what I've been doing. And I don't know why at some point someone thought, let's put a continue in, where if you die too many times, you can just continue from a slightly earlier point. Mega Man Legends does not have that. Mega Man Legends, if you die, you go back to the main menu and you have to reload your save. I think I might have mentioned this last week, but I have to reiterate how fucking annoying it is.
So old school.
Because there's like dungeons in this game that you go through, and then there's a boss at the end. And eventually towards the end of the game, I learned through frustration that it's like, okay, go through the dungeon, go all the way back through all the loading screens, find the little stupid monkey, talk to him, save your game. That takes a few minutes because of all the loading. Then go back through the dungeon and find the boss. It's like, ugh. But if you don't do that and you die when you fight the boss, then you're fucked. Yeah. Like you have to do literally everything again. So overall,
I have not touched that game since October 1998. So I don't remember any of it. Yeah.
Did you play the second one?
No, I played Tron, I want to say.
That game rules. I sold it and I feel like a moron now because it's one of the rarest.
I think I might have played Mega Man Legends too, because there's Mega Man 64 as well, which I think was just a port of Legends. See, the thing about Legends was that if you don't count Battle and Chase and all the random soccer and all that shit, this was only the third iteration of Mega Man after Mega Man Classic and Mega Man X. And I've said it in the past, Dagan bought me this for my birthday in 9th grade. And I remember it clear as day. And I kind of, we were into it, but I was like, what the fuck is this? I just, for some reason, it wasn't until Battle Network, so that was on Game Boy Advance, that there was a Mega Man spinoff that wasn't X that I was like, oh, okay, I can get down with this.
Yeah.
But then they lost me again with Star Force. So it's really hit or miss. I'm still because a lot of people always send me. There's a lot of cool statues. Capcom's all into licensing shit, but people keep sending me links of these things, and they're cool. But I'm like, this is Mega Man X, and I don't think people realize I'm not a Mega Man X fan. I like Mega Man X, but I'm a Mega Man fan, like a classic Mega Man fan, little chibi Mega Man, not the one with the red diamond on his helmet and all that. And I know it's the same character to a lot of people, but it's not the same character. So.
No.
Yeah, and Legend.
Mega
So
Man
what is Legend's character? His name is something Nut or something. Volnut, right? Yeah, something like that.
There's a whole storyline. Like the thing in this game is that there's this island. The world is made up of islands, and these diggers go to these different islands where they find. I knew that I was going to get that. I made a very clear D on that. So they have to go and find these refractors that are like energy that the islands use. But there's like a ancient civilization that left them behind, and you uncover one that like goes to try to wipe out everybody on the island. So there's this whole aspect of it, but overall cool game, very dated in a lot of ways, but I enjoyed it. The other one, Colin, how do you say the name of this game?
It's Live Alive.
I've heard Live Alive, I've heard Live Alive, I've heard every permutation.
I'm going to tell you how I know how to say it. Schneider. It's he said he lived in Japan, he speaks Japanese. Live Alive is how it's said.
Okay.
Now I can see people being confused, because for people that don't know, it's LIVE space A space LIVE. So that could be live alive, like it's fucking nonsense. Probably half the reason why they didn't port it in the 90s, but that's not on PlayStation yet. But yeah, talk to us about it.
No. Yeah. So this is Square Enix. This is a 2D, 3D remake joint along the lines of, well, I guess Octopath Traveler. It's in that style. Obviously, that's not a remake, and this is of a Super Nintendo game that never released in the US, but now has been localized, remade for currently just the Nintendo Switch. And it's cool that this game kind of has an Octopath Traveler element to it, where you play as many different characters. And so I'm on the second character, which you can play them in any order. The first one I played was in like I think it's Imperial China, and now I'm doing one that's in like ancient Japan. And it feels like each one is like a little bite-sized JRPG that's like 2.5 hours long, and then you're done. And so you get to play through this story. And to my understanding, each one kind of has its own angle. The first one I played was very combat heavy. The one in Japan is much more stealth based. There's ones that are more puzzle based. I have no idea if these storylines come together in some unique way, but overall, it's at least a very interesting game. I'm not necessarily in love with it yet, but it's possible just the 1.5 characters I've played as so far just aren't the ones that are going to appeal to me. There's one that's in like the near future, the far future. There's one that's like cavemen and stuff. So
it's like Chrono Trigger meets Saga Frontier or something like that in some weird way. Yeah.
It's at least a very interesting game, which right now is something that appeals to me more than anything, is just something different. So overall, though, this is a neat game. It's 50 instead of 60. But Chris, you're like, it seems like I said something that was a revelation to you.
No. So I just wanted to look it up and what this game is that you were talking about. And I looked up Live Alive, Nintendo Switch, uploaded by Nintendo's official channel on February 9th, 2022. And it's like from a direct.
Right.
So it's like showing trailers. And then the announcer says the classic RPG Live Alive.
That's why I thought it was Live Alive, was that Nintendo Direct. But I'm going to go with Per Schneider on this one.
I didn't know that, because I've gone on Per Schneider saying that, because I've talked to him about the game before.
I guess it's whatever the fuck you want.
Hold on. I want to see. I feel like he might have tweeted this out too. Let me see. I'm going to find it real time. What is pure?
According to the English announcer, which I don't know how much stock they put on correcting that guy, because I'm sure I've heard mispronunciations on this before, but
it's possible too. Marketing is not always right. Like there was that NVIDIA thing where they called it the NVIDIA, the 3080 Ti. And it's like, it's not Ti. It's TI.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
always
No,
been TI.
No, for sure.
So
it does happen a lot.
yeah,
I did, it just threw me for a loop when I heard it because I was you know.
I'm not he
just
did
finished.
tweet about it, but I'm not finding the pronunciation. Maybe I made it up. Well,
It's not a big fucking deal.
please don't
It's-
write
it's
in about it
whatever
just
is.
because it's Switch and I can't.
we can't do that.
I just can't do it. And Tomba, it says here.
Last thing, I got a copy of Tomba that was I was able to get it for a really good deal from a regular write-in listener of the show, Sean Mason, helped me out. So I'm playing through that
cool.
right now.
I bought a bunch of amiibo from him.
Yeah,
well.
dude, he was able to find it and get it like a really, really good deal. So it was really awesome. Thank you, Sean. And this game's awesome. I'm playing it on my CRT. It looks like perfect. I really realized I knew that playing a CRT was better, obviously, for these old games. Like I knew that, but I was really just kind of curious just to see like what this looks like on my OLED versus the CRT. So I put it in my PS3, plugged into my OLED, and it's not comparable, man. If you can get an old TV to play these old games, it's like the way to do it. So
It's isn't it jarring like how much better it looks? It seems impossible that it looks as good as it does on old TVs.
Well, and there is an element too where like if you hook up a old console directly to a new flat screen, it's going to upscale it horribly and look like shit. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just saying like the way the pixels were designed and meant to look. Like 100%. You can see there's like some really neat comparisons of the way that they would lay out pixels. They designed them that they were supposed to be with scan lines and potentially like a little blurry on the edges. And so they blend together, but on a flat screen, it's not going to do that at all. So Tomba, though, really cute, really fun game that I'm really enjoying. I obviously have played Tomba 2 a million times, but I never actually finished the first one. So it's a new experience for me.
So I found what Per was talking about, and he says it's supposed to be like live a life. You know, like that was how it apparently started. So it's live alive.
Live alive.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Right. I've known to trust Per. I've known him for a very long time, of course. Founder of IGN. So, and the person who, for some reason, hired me and that's why I'm here today. So hello to you.
Yeah. They should fire that announcer over at Nintendo.
Well, yeah, they're giving whatever information they're giving.
Put that man on the street.
I still want to say Ryu, like all the time. I have to check myself, retrain myself to not say it wrong. All right. As far as I'm concerned here, I've only been playing one game, Cyberpunk 2077. I love this game. This game's awesome. Now, it's annoying because it is very technically unsound, and I've said this in the past. It has all the trappings of this slick quadruple A, no, I'm looking AAA game where and I've said before, the animation, the eyes, there was like a cool thing where you do something for this guy across the bar and he just like goes like this. Like he's like leaning on the bar and he just goes and then puts his, but it's like so realistic. Like it's very, the world is alive, pardon the pun. And Night City is fascinating, endlessly fascinating. It really is. And I played it for about 35 hours. I'm at the point of no return, but there is a bunch of stuff I've not done yet. I must admit it's kind of embarrassing. I have barely used the map at all. I just use the journal entries and I only use the map to quick travel. But the map has its own icons on it that I've not gone and investigated because I thought those icons were all attached to missions that were in my journal, but they're totally separate. So the visual language is a little off for me in that regard.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But I'm really into it. I love how it can be stealthy. I love how you can manipulate your way. I feel so good about myself when I get like I have to go to a nightclub to get something and I just do it. I bribe the guy up front. I threaten the bartender. I get a key card from an office I sneak into. I go in and I hold up the owner and no one is aware that I'm there. But I could have gone and blasted my way through it, or I could have done it a bunch of different ways. Not unprecedented in Fallout type games, but I really like this game and I just want to reiterate that it is such a shame what they did to it because it is never, ever, ever going to be appreciated the way it should be. And I think that is a reasonable thing. That's what happens when you marry commerce and art. One can drag down the other, just as one can lift the other up. One can totally be an anchor, an albatross, and just fucking suck you down to the depths. And I really think by them releasing the game on PS4 and Xbox One, bad idea. If they can go back and do it again, I think they would just say like we're only releasing it on PC and we'll be ready when we're ready on the next gen consoles. It's just not, it's not in an acceptable quality. And that would have been an inflection point where this game would be talked about like Elden Ring, but it's never going to be talked about like Elden Ring. And
no.
Now it's worth noting that I get caught in the environment sometimes, have to restart. Game locks up when I'm saving, have to restart. Something doesn't trigger in a quest, have to restart. I've had a few things where things stay on the UI and I have to go back to a menu, the start menu, and then start the game again because so there's a lot of fucked up things with it. There's no doubt about it. It's not fine. It feels like Fallout 3. It just feels like a more modern Fallout 3. Like for people that weren't playing Fallout 3 in 2008, what I mean by that is that game was fucking broken. it was, but we were so enamored with it that we were like, whatever, dude. And we just, and it became that Bethesda jank that we're kind of hoping is not in Starfield. And so, yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Cyberpunk 2077. It's really, really great. Now, Micah's parents are here, so I'm not gonna be able to play tonight, but I'll get back into it this weekend. I also want to note that I've decided what my next Vita game is going to be after a little while away. And I've decided it's going to be Final Fantasy X. And I just feel post Wild Arms replay that I'm in a JRPG mood. I've obviously bought the game when it came out. I don't know if I've said this on the show. It was Final Fantasy X on PS2 was the first game I ever bought online. And I remember getting it. I was a senior in high school and I hated it. And then it came to Vita and I tried it twice and I just didn't like it. But I'm really going to sit there. It's the characters that turn me off. And so I'm going to try Final Fantasy X. So Cyberpunk 2077, Final Fantasy X more next week on those. That's what we're playing.
Hey, Colin.
Yeah, please.
I want to bring up one Final Fantasy thing real quick. Please. It made me think of this. So I downloaded Final Fantasy VIII and played the first 20 minutes. The fuck's going on with that game?
It's so funny. I did the same thing when I was staying with my mom. When my house was being built, I played Final Fantasy VIII for like an hour, and I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I played it when I was younger in high school. Final Fantasy VIII's fucked for one foundational reason, is that its experience system is predicated on total scaling with enemies, and it requires you to fight as little as possible. If you play Final Fantasy VIII and play it any other way, you're making it harder for yourself. There are like walkthroughs will tell you just go, like. Just play the game, and I just find it so weird and unsettling. What did you find weird about it?
Well, I just am think about the contrast between, let's say you play the first 20 minutes of Final Fantasy VII and the first 20 minutes of Final Fantasy VIII. Think about the contrast.
Yeah, it takes place in like an academy, right?
Yeah. But like 7, you're like, you're jumping off the train, you're going in, you're going to blow up the reactor. You've got this like these shady characters. You got a guy with an arm that's a gun. There's all these crazy things going on, and you're instantly thrown into the action. Final Fantasy VIII is you waking up and you're in an academy and you're late for class or something, and then tutorials. And that's it. That's the first 20 minutes of that game. It is baffling.
Yeah, it's a boring one.
I was like, maybe I mean, to be 100% fair, I really literally only did put 20 to 30 minutes into this game. So I did not give it a fair shake.
You got to play it so you can play the combat and see what you think of that. Because the draw system and all that, it's a very weird game. It truly is. I think it's except for maybe, I mean, all of them are weird, starting with 13, but I think 12 was the only other one where it was like, this doesn't feel right. Obviously, other than 11, 12 is really good, but 12 felt like a faux MMO. Like they were trying to make an MMO offline .hack type game. And with 8, I just remember, the level scaling's bad. And so for people that don't know, you draw all of your skills from enemies. So you have to steal the enemy's skills and then save them and then use them. Like you can't use them permanently. You use them based on what you've stolen. It's a cool idea, but the game scales with you. So you just can make it really, really hard by playing like I can't speak for everyone. When I play a game like that, I want to grind. I want to know that if I just spend a little bit of time, buy the best equipment, level up, I can pass the next challenge. And Final Fantasy VIII does it a little bit differently. So have fun. I don't know if you're going to get back to it, but
I don't know yet. We'll see.
All right, let's get into the news. There's a bigger pieces of news. There's 4 items I wanted to get through this week. A lot of people wrote in about the next one, so we'll kick off with it. Number 1, as we've talked about ad nauseum on this show, and as you no doubt know, Microsoft is looking to secure megalithic publisher Activision Blizzard, and such a large transaction requires a ton of interaction with various global economic regulators, such as the Federal Trade Commission in the United States. But as relayed by multiple sources, including website Video Games Chronicle, another national regulator investigating the deal is in Brazil. In that South American country, various competing companies have the right to submit their thoughts to the government about huge deals such as this, and are often ordered to answer specific questions pertaining to it. Just about any company you can think of that deals with video games has thus rendered an opinion about the Microsoft Activision deal to the Brazilian regulators, and that information is public, though in Portuguese. There's a lot of interesting information buried in there, according to VGC, specific in regards to how Sony sees Call of Duty, its role in its platform, and its ability or inability to compete with it on its own. Here's what Sony said in part. Call of Duty is, quote, an essential game, a blockbuster, a AAA type game that has no rival. According to a 2019 study, the importance of Call of Duty to entertainment is, in general, indescribable. The brand was the only video game IP to break into the top 10 of all entertainment brands amongst fans, joining powerhouses such as Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings. Call of Duty is so popular that it influences users' choice of console, and its community of loyal users is entrenched enough that even if a competitor has the budget to develop a similar product, it would not be able to rival it, end quote. They later go on, quote, each annual Call of Duty release takes 3 to 5 years to develop. As Activision releases one Call of Duty game per year, this equates to an annual investment of hundreds of millions of dollars. Approximately 1,200 people work on each version, and another 1,500 are involved in publishing and distribution. Thus, Call of Duty alone has more developers than most game companies employ across its entire development portfolio, including AAA studios, ellipsis. No other developer can devote the same level of resources and expertise in game development. Even if they could do that, Call of Duty is overly entrenched so that no rival, no matter how relevant they are, can catch up, end quote. Interestingly, this information comes on the back of Activision Blizzard's financials, which show a declining Call of Duty brand, though it's all relative. Last year, Activision's suite of games had 150 million users, but now it's at 94 million. And millions of that shortfall alone come from Call of Duty. Microsoft's play for Activision should close later this year, bringing its studios and IP into Microsoft's Xbox family. However, it appears that Activision Blizzard's biggest games, including future Call of Duty games, as well as Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2, will remain multi-platform, rendering somewhat moot the advantage Microsoft would otherwise be able to employ by making these games exclusive. Activision Blizzard also owns IP like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, StarCraft, Warcraft, Guitar Hero, Tony Hawk, and more. Activision studios include Call of Duty developers Infinity Ward, Treyarch, Sledgehammer, and Raven, as well as Toys for Bob, Beanox, High Moon, and others. All right, so that's a lot. Now, I want to go right into the question that we got a lot of questions, but I pulled one out that I wanted to use from Bootsy. It said, hey, CDC, the discourse around Sony's recent comments regarding the Microsoft and Activision acquisition seem really weird to me. Many are framing it as if Sony is terrified and lashing out, but I don't see it this way at all. They simply gave their opinion as requested by regulators, and they're obviously not going to be super positive about it. What do you think about Sony's comments and the subsequent discourse? Do you think Sony is truly terrified of Microsoft owning Call of Duty, or is everyone being a bit hyperbolic? My opinion, Dustin, it is hyperbole. I think it's a slow time in the industry. I think this is interesting news. People did the legwork to find it. It's foreign language. It's in regulatory documents. I mean, no one wants to read that shit. So it's cool. It's good legwork. I appreciate it. And it's cool to know. But what else are they going to say? They want to try to sow as much discord into it as possible. It's not going to stop anything from happening, but they're being honest, and they know this stuff's public and people can find it. So I don't know that they're necessarily saying anything that they wouldn't maybe say more publicly in a different way through PR arms. So I understand people reading it as them being scared, but I would argue that there's nothing to really be scared of, because I want to reiterate this because some people just don't understand it. I don't think Microsoft has said two things about Call of Duty: that they will, once Activision is acquired, keep Call of Duty games on PlayStation platforms up until the point that their agreements end on the marketing front, and that they will surpass that date with not only Call of Duty games, but other games as well. Diablo 4, Overwatch 2, all of these games are coming to PlayStation 5, and Call of Duty games will always be on PlayStation. So I think the only way you can read into this a real fear is if they made those games exclusive. But if they did that, then I think they would attract the ire of regulators, including the FTC, which would destroy the deal. So I don't know that Sony really has anything to worry about. What are your thoughts?
Well, there is the element to consider that, sure, they will continue to be on PlayStation, but Xbox will have a major advantage if these are on Game Pass. Mm-hmm. Like, that is going to be a huge pull. Definitely. For many, many, many people. But I agree. I feel like there was a lot of, I saw like a meme, and it's a meme, so it's meant to be a joke. I get it. But it was Call of Duty's box art and it had all the quotes from Sony's statement about it, like an irreplaceable game, stuff like that.
That would be funny if they did that.
Yeah. So I get
That's
it.
That's actually a great idea.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think you're right in that Sony's laying it out and is like, when you have a giant publisher that's already Xbox acquiring another giant publisher, and they've already acquired one other giant publisher, then yes, there is some consolidation going on that is undesirable, particularly if you're on the not positive end of it, which is Sony right now. So yeah, I feel like what they said makes sense, and it's not going to do anything. At this point, I'm trying to remember what different things I saw that it seems like, yeah, this deal is going to go through without any issues. So, but it is interesting to see them actually officially comment on it nonetheless.
Chris, what do you make of this? Do you think there's anything here? It's worth noting, if people want to go read the Portuguese, I can. I've read some translations, but all of the other publishers, like even Apple and others, like all submitted like extensive write-ups about their thoughts on this, and everyone's kind of like apparently pretty blasé about it, except for Sony. So I understand people focusing in on Sony, but Sony's the only one that can be adversely affected by this. So of course they're gonna fight back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think they're trying to sow seeds of doubt because it's in their best interest to do so. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel a number of ways about this. First of all, I think Microsoft's response to this is funny. I don't know if you guys saw that, but
no,
like,
I didn't.
They were talking about. They said something along the lines of, "There's nothing wholly unique about anything that Activision makes. So, like, what's the big deal?" Like, I get it's like to downplay, but it's just like a really funny thing to like you're spending like billions of dollars to acquire this publisher who you, by your admission, doesn't do anything unique. Why? It's just very funny. It's like the wording is just very funny, but at the same time, like this concern, I get that it's different because this is a proper purchase, but it is a little funny to hear Sony talk about the importance of Call of Duty and how it might sway people's decision on what consoles to play on, despite the fact that crossplay has been, wholly adopted by so many multiplayer games recently, while they continue to lock down Final Fantasy on their platform and their platform only. That's a little funny to me. Like, because, I mean, come on. Like, Call of Duty, I don't think anybody's really going to be... Again, because these are multi-platform games that are just going to be owned by Microsoft and published by Microsoft on your platform, and there's crossplay involved, I don't know if anybody's really going to be making any hard switches to Xbox from PlayStation just because Call of Duty is owned by them now. But there's a really good case to be made that Final Fantasy being owned by PlayStation makes is a far bigger deal in that realm. I know Final Fantasy isn't as big as much of a behemoth as Call of Duty, but I mean, functionally, I think that plays, as far as those audiences are concerned, that matters way more to the average consumer when they're making a decision on what to play on than it does for Call of Duty. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of funniness in this story, but
yeah, I wish they would just get it over with so we can just move on.
Yeah,
there's just so many other games to play. I think the only thing I want to say about this is it just goes to show you the entrenched advantage that knowledge and institutional knowledge and kind of a marketing presence and an industry presence give you just with inertia alone. Like Call of Duty just being floating through for 20 years or so has an advantage. And that's what they're basically saying. Like, we could revive Killzone or do something crazy, but it doesn't matter. It's not going to ever be Call of Duty because we simply don't have the means to do that. And that's a really interesting admission, because you have other companies like Dr. Disrespect's developers saying, like, we're making something better than Call of Duty. And what Sony's saying is, like, it doesn't matter because it's never going to be Call of Duty. And there's something to that, but it sounds defeatist. And I wonder, though I think they haven't really said anything that they wouldn't maybe say in other venues in different ways, I wonder if they would wish that it wasn't picked up, because it does make them look a little bit weak, perhaps. But I don't really give a shit. I mean, I'm excited to see what they have in store, and I want to see what their inevitable shooter is going to be, or multiple shooters. I mean, obviously, what Deviation is, that second party team that's there's a bunch of Treyarch guys there. I mean, they're obviously making a shooter, so we're going to see. And we'll see what they can do with Call of Duty. But I just want this deal to be done. Let's just get it over with. I think it's going to be done soon, so we'll find out. But it's good that everyone's doing their due diligence, I guess. Okay. Number 2. Sony's quarterly financials are out, so let's discuss. I went through everyone else's financials because it is that season, by the way, but I'm only going to share Sony's because everything else is boring. Like many multinational corporations, Sony is concerned about the current economic climate and fears it may get worse. They write in part, quote, "The business environment has changed significantly, and there are concerns that the global economy will further decelerate due to recent rapid inflation and monetary policies several countries are pursuing to respond to." I'm sorry. I'm going to just read that again. Quote, "The business environment has changed significantly, and there are concerns that the global economy will further decelerate due to recent rapid inflation and monetary policies several countries are pursuing to respond to it," end quote. Sony's company-wide revenue for the first quarter amounts to $17.3 billion, $2.3 billion of which is profit. PlayStation accounted for $4.5 billion of that revenue and made just shy of $400 million in profit for the quarter. Based on these numbers, Sony is forecasting just north of $27 billion in revenue from PlayStation for the entirety of the fiscal year, with about $2 billion in total profit. This means that Sony essentially sees a net neutral financial situation for the brand for the duration of the fiscal year, which runs through March of 2023. Deep in its financials, Sony notes that soft game sales are in part to blame for weaker financial conditions, with fewer meaningful releases year over year. Sony is also losing money, as noted, on inflation and poor exchange rates, as well as eating the cost of purchasing Bungie, which is now official. There's decidedly bad news, though. Quote, "Total gameplay time for PlayStation users declined 15% year over year in quarter one. Gameplay time in the month of June improved 3% compared with May, which was down 10% versus June 2021. But this is a much lower level of engagement than we anticipated in our previous forecast," end quote. Perhaps most insane of all is that in April, May, and June of this year, Sony was only able to sell 2.4 million PS5s, which seems far, far short of their total year goal of 18 million. Interestingly, the company explicitly notes that it won't be changing its forecast, indicating that they expect to be able to drastically increase production later in the year. Sony software sales, physical and digital, are also way down as well. 47.1 million pieces of software were sold in the fiscal quarter, down 26%. PlayStation Plus users sit at 47.3 million, and 4 out of every 5 games purchased on the console are bought digitally, a continuing death knell for physical games. PlayStation 5 sits at 21.7 million units sold and has now officially outsold Nintendo's GameCube, with the original Xbox next up at 24 million. All right, there's a lot there as well. Chris, let's go to you first. I'm curious, what are you hearing with like friends and people around you about PlayStation 5's accessibility? Like, I'm still hearing that it's impossible to find. Like, it seems so strange. And 2.4 million is bad. That's less than a million a quarter. They're simply not able to make enough, and it's really going to affect them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's hard for me to say because most of my friends either have a PS5 or if they don't have one, they don't want one, so they're not looking. There's very few who don't already have them. So like at this point, it is kind of shocking to hear that to me. Although the few times that I have been out in department stores or Best Buys and what have you, they're not there. So I mean, it must be hard to get these things out. I'm not necessarily surprised by this stagnancy, not necessarily just in getting units out, but also just engagement and sales as well. Just because I think this is kind of the case for everybody right now. Like I think what's happening right now is you're starting to see I'll put it this way. I think the pandemic was an unnatural boon that we wouldn't have otherwise seen had it not been for the specific circumstances that we were confronted with. We were indoors for a good 2 years, and we had nothing to do but play games, and we had nothing to do but engage in these ecosystems.
And they gave you money to buy it.
Yeah.
In addition.
But even with that, what else are you gonna do? There's so many people who got into. I know a lot of people who just weren't really playing games before the pandemic who got into it during it because there was nothing else to do. And now that things are a lot less restrictive, I know people. It's so funny. I was in Los Angeles super recently, and people were like, "Oh man, I bet how's the mask situation over there?" And it's like no one. No one cares. It's this pandemic is over by most people's. It's not But most people are just over it. They're just like, whatever, take me now. I'll deal with it. And I think now that people are just out and about, people are just less engaged. And I'm sure there's been a lot of people who bought like, a year of this or like, something like that. And now that's kind of fallen off. And it's not surprising to me that people are kind of like back into the real world again. And thus they're engaging with the platform a little bit less. And also it doesn't help that there's just not much happening right now. And over the last few months, quite honestly, like there's not been much going on. So it doesn't surprise me that this is kind of the case.
I saw today that, speaking of COVID, that Biden has COVID again. So I think this is the third time in like 3 weeks. What?
That's great. That's wild. Is that even possible?
I don't know, apparently.
If you're old enough. Dad tried to tell me it had something to do with the medicine he was on. It can lower your COVID count, but then when you're off the medicine, it comes back up.
Oh man, I don't know. Whatever. That's too medically scientific for us to say anything professional on it. But
that man's basically a vegetable. So it's like what
it might even make him stronger.
Yeah. So interesting. It's just as you brought it up, I just read and it said Jesus Christ. Okay. We have a letter here. I wanted to just read this in. I didn't know where else to put this, but this is from Mark Grouch because he was listening to Gabbin and Games, which is David Jaffe's show, our friend David Jaffe, who's been on Sacred Symbols before. We go on his show as well. And he had this interesting story that he wanted to share. So I'll just let him say it. It says, "Hey shitters, friend of the show, David Jaffe, said earlier this week on his Gabbin and Games show that in 2001, an Iron Man game was in the early stages of development at Sony Santa Monica. He said that some ideas for the game ended up in God of War, such as when you're navigating the Desert of Lost Souls looking for sirens by listening for their screams. That idea came from a proposed level where Iron Man would search through a burning building for trapped people by listening for their cries for help. Most surprising of all was that the project fell through because the person they tapped to direct the game declined the offer because Jaffe and some of the designers on the team were listening to Howard Stern during a car ride with the guy. Colin, I've listened to you for more than 10 years, and I don't think I've ever heard you talk about this, so I've got to ask, did you know about this? I didn't. And we have to delve deeper into the Iron Man story. I love the idea of how the director was scared away because Jaffe and these guys were listening to Howard Stern, so he was a fucking, whoever it was a lame-o even when Howard Stern was huge. So maybe they dodged a bullet there, but that's interesting. I'm going to look into more about that Iron Man game. Love to hear more about that. The early days of Sony Santa Monica. Remember, of course, their first game was Connecticut, and they wouldn't release God of War until 2005. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. I had no idea where else to put it. I figured I'd put it in the business section. All right. Number 3. In an extensive interview published on website gamesindustry.biz, recently purchased developer Supermassive Games, which was bought by European film imprint Nordisk in recent weeks, outlines its aggressive plans for the future. And these plans are worth paying attention to because they are perhaps the most ambitious we've ever heard from a AAA studio. In talking with the website, the studio's managing director, Pete Samuels, notes that Supermassive has found a natural fit with Nordisk, which apparently has no real interest in interfering with its business. Indeed, Supermassive was happy to apparently remain independent except for Nordisk's offer. So here's the interesting stuff. Pete Samuels apparently presented all of Supermassive with their next 5-year plan, a plan that will see the studio grow to more than 400 heads, with a planned release calendar stretching out 6 years, and they won't all be traditional Supermassive fare, end quote. Quote, "These releases are largely geared around growing our audience, which means they require an amount of innovation, and some of that will be in the genre we're most famous for, but also some diversification in types of games we make," end quote. The types of games Supermassive is known for, of course, are choice-based horror games in a similar vein as Quantic Dreams, though revolving for, of course, are I messed up there again. Though revolving around horror. Their 2015 PS4 exclusive second-party game Until Dawn was the archetype, which they still follow today, with their annualized Dark Pictures anthology with publisher Bandai Namco, and the recently released teen slasher game The Quarry, which was rescued by publisher 2K as it was supposed to be a Stadia exclusive. But they won't get too far from their roots. Quote, "Horror lends itself very well to the type of game we want to make. We focus on trying to create great stories with great characters, with choice and consequence being such a big part. Obviously, there's a lot to focus on death and fear and so on. Could we make it work well in other genres? Yes, but our focus is on the darker side. That said, you can do dark without doing horror, and there's certainly conversations we have on a regular basis about what we might do," end quote. A few more interesting notes. Samuel says Supermassive is allowed to work with whatever publishers and on whatever console it would like, meaning a potential Sony return isn't necessarily out of the question. They consider the Dark Pictures games, of which there are 3 with a 4th down the road, as an individual IP potentially worth harvesting. And here's the big one. They're aiming to get multiple games out a year, something they've been doing with at least 1 game a year since 2019. Supermassive, founded in the UK in 2008, was once in Sony's stable of second-party developers and was considered an obvious choice for potential acquisition. However, while the team heavily supported Sony products on PS3, PS4, Vita, and PSVR, Until Dawn is largely considered their high point. Dustin, I want to go to you with this one first. The situation here is interesting. I said it's like the most ambitious plan we've ever heard from a AAA studio. I think it's undeniable. I don't know of any other AAA studio that says we're going to release multiple games a year. And 400 people is a lot. It's a big head count. Some might argue that the equivalent support on some of these games like GTA Online or Destiny 2 or whatever are the equivalent of releasing new games every year with their updates. But I've never heard of a AAA developer so proudly saying like, we're going and, choo-choo kind of thing. We're going full steam ahead. What do you think?
I feel like that's highly concerning based on their recent release, The Quarry, which you could make the argument, or they could make the argument, that was kind of a saved project since, as we know, it was supposed to come out on Stadia and then ended up resurfacing, available on all consoles recently. But there was a lot of polish issues with that game and a lot of aspects that weren't really so great for a $70 full price title. And so to hear that they want to ramp up and do multiple games a year is intriguing, but I definitely have some concerns, especially based on the other stuff that they've made. Particularly, I wonder, we've had this conversation lightly before in the past, but is Supermassive Games a one-hit wonder studio with Until Dawn? Because they have tried multiple times now to replicate that success and really just have not done it quite yet. They've gotten sort of close in certain aspects, but overall, they just don't seem to be able to get a game that hits quite the same way. And so, I don't know, maybe expanding that headcount can help them achieve that goal. But right now, it kind of feels more, I don't want to say hollow ambition, but they also don't really have a lot to show for it at the time. And I like Supermassive. I think that they're a studio doing something unique. And I like the fact that they are dedicated to this concept in their games, this multiple choice, branching path type aspect of it. But I just, I feel like I've played every game of theirs that I've played since Until Dawn. There is like something that I drastically don't like about it. So I don't know. I feel concerned overall.
Yeah, it's worth noting before anyone writes in that I know that Man of Medan and Little Hope are less well received than House of Ashes. I think that's the third one. People really liked that one. I don't know. But yeah, I agree with you about The Quarry. I thought The Quarry was I was pretty let down by The Quarry. I wasn't into it as much as I thought I was going to be. But again, that could be a half complete game that they just wanted to get out the door. So who knows? Chris, let's ask you, what would you like from Supermassive? They kind of play around with the idea of doing something else. I don't know how you can have this level of repetition and not do the same thing over and over again. And that sounds a little bit to me like Telltale Games, which obviously didn't portend well for the original version of Telltale Games. They're back now. But that version of Telltale went out because they couldn't keep up with this great scale. So I love the idea of them doing something else. And they had tried to do something else. They did like a shooter on PSVR. They did that on-rail shooter for PSVR or that on-rail experience for Until Dawn at PSVR's launch in 2016. They used to do a Little Big Planet DLC and all the rest. So they have potential, but I'm wondering if you'd want to see anything else out of them.
I don't know. It's hard to say because I wasn't really all that big on Until Dawn when it came out. I did enjoy The Quarry. I didn't like Man of Medan at all. I didn't even try the other ones, the other Dark Pictures, because I didn't hear anything good about Little Hope, and I just haven't heard anything at all about House of Ashes. But I don't know. To me, the whole ambition aspect of this, I would agree in most cases. If most studios were to say something like this, like we're going to put out multiple games a year, I'd be like, wow, that's crazy. But with a studio like Supermassive, I kind of feel like, oh yeah, that's possible. Because they're working, they even with the non-linearity of the way they make their stories, they're still very linear games. Like they don't have to worry about physics engines. There's like all sorts of things. Like there's all sorts of things that are commonplace in most game development that just doesn't really apply to the games that they make. So it makes sense to me that they could like just scan a few actors in and get a script together with like some branching paths. You could probably get that shot and done in like a way quicker amount of time than you can with a game that, you know, has to build these like really intricate play spaces that oh man, the characters shouldn't be able to jump there. We gotta fix that hitbox or whatever the fuck. Oh, we gotta tune weapon damage on this, or we have to tune the cutscene here doesn't quite work with the gameplay here. It's like it's a very different beast that they're working with. It's not to say that it's easy. Like I couldn't do what the hell Supermassive does, but it's certainly a smaller workload than, I don't know, building something like a GTA every year. You know, like it's definitely like a different animal, a different beast altogether. So it is still ambitious, but I think the nature of what they make makes it a little less so. That said, what else could it be? I don't know what else I would want to see from them, because I feel like all that I've got from them is stuff that I think is pretty decent and pretty interesting and okay to not all that good. So I just hope whatever it is, I don't care what genre it is, I don't care what the hell types of stories they try to tell. I just hope whatever it is they make next is good. That's it. Like and engaging, because they're clearly focused on this narrative storytelling, this kind of choose your own adventure style of game, it seems. So just make something good. And I think that might lead them away from horror for a little bit. You know, I think that would be the right thing to do, maybe just to flex muscles a little bit, because you can only work on the same thing for so long, even if you're kind of switching up characters and switching up like scripts. I mean, let's face it, like those werewolves were basically Wendigos, you know, like, yeah, it's kind of the same overall feel and idea of Until Dawn.
It's interesting because you both had kind of mentioned this idea of not really knowing what to expect. Like when you look at Supermassive's catalog of work, it's like we ported Killzone to PS3. We did Little Big Planet DLC. Then we started doing Until Dawn, which was on PS3, and then it was ported to PS4 during development, and then it was actually a move game and all this. They've kind of been involved with Sony, so you can imagine them coming kind of back. But I like what he says, Pete Samuels says, who I met many years ago, and he was a nice guy, but I like what he says about how we can do horror without doing horror. And I want to kind of see that. There's a lot of good TV miniseries that I watch, or I kind of used to watch when I was in California more, but these like murder mysteries, right? These kind of, or like something like Midnight Mass. It's horror, but it's kind of not. It's not horror in the same way that these games are horror based. And the one thing is that Supermassive is definitely willing to cut corners. They have to if they want to keep this schedule up. And the water effects in, as I said, in the Quarry were the worst I've ever seen in years. And so there is something wrong with this system. But what I want to say is that I don't know that there's wisdom in doing this. As I was saying earlier, the markets are only becoming more competitive. There's going to be more games flooding the marketplaces than ever. Now, indie games and smaller games suffer from discoverability problems the most, but everyone suffers from discoverability problems. Everyone has a horse in the race. The Quarry is discovered the same way pErIlS is discovered by a lot of people, by just finding it on the store. And is it wise to keep hitting the store? Maybe. But couldn't you make one great game and demand attention? And Supermassive's never really demanded anyone's attention. And I feel like they have a AAA mind, but it's an A quality execution. There's nothing wrong with that, but I wouldn't consider the Dark Pictures anthology games necessary, or the Quarry necessarily AAA, AA. Definitely right. Bigger budget, 30, 40, $50 million games, but they're not there. So what are they trying to carve out for themselves? What I think would be really cool is if Nordisk came in and said, like, the charge is we're going to get out of this Bandai Namco deal and you're going to make one game for 4 years. And it's going to be what Heavy Rain was for the PS3. It's going to be what Detroit or Until Dawn were on PS4, but maybe even better than that. And it'll be on multiple platforms and all the rest. Like, really fulfill, instead of working on 5 stories at once, which of those stories is the best one? And then just get rid of everything else and just focus on that one idea. This is the way most developers do it. And I'm not entirely sure that you can make games like this. So we'll see. I'm wishing them the best, but I think Telltale is the cautionary tale here. All right, fine. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I was just saying it because you said Telltale was the cautionary. Yeah, that was nice.
Sorry about that.
Felt good.
Why is it raining? It's weird. Okay. Because it's just like perfectly sunny out before. Okay, now it's.
Oh, I was like, well, it's kind of an active.
Yeah, I mean, rain happens.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. All right, number 4 is the final news item. Chinese mega corporation Tencent, widely considered a working organ of the Chinese Communist government, has rapidly been expanding its tethers throughout the industry. Indeed, their portfolio of holdings is extensive. They own all of outfits like Riot, Sumo Digital, Turtle Rock, and Funcom, and pieces of studios ranging from Supercell, Bloober, Marvelous, and Don't Nod to Epic, Katakawa, Paradox, and Remedy. One piece of their portfolio, in fact, is 5% of Ubisoft, the French-Canadian publisher and developer family best known for its Assassin's Creed and Tom Clancy games. And according to Newswire Reuters, they want to gobble up more of Ubisoft, potentially seeing it as the lowest hanging fruit in the AAA tree. According to the report, quote, it's not clear how much more Tencent wants to own in Ubisoft, valued at $5.3 billion, but Tencent aims to become the single largest shareholder of the French company with an additional stake purchase, end quote. The biggest individual stakeholder is the Guillemot family, the founders of Ubisoft, which still maintain 15% control. As such, Tencent is willing to offer around $100 a share to both individual owners as well as the market itself. 80% of the company is held by market investors, and according to Reuters, Tencent sees Ubisoft as a way to continue to diversify its money outside of China, where gaming is under a government crackdown, where many games can't be sold or played, where there are limits on how much you can play and more. It's not a tenable place to reliably make money for a video game company. Ubisoft, a 35-year-old company, may soon have a new controlling entity, a corporate vassal of communist China. So as far as I understand from reading not only Reuters, but some other reporting around this, Tencent plans to both go to the Guillemot family and offer them $100 a share with a $5.3 billion total valuation, and go to the board that will bring it to the market, to its owners, to see if they want to take the deal, which I think is like 12% higher than its market value right now. So I think this is going to happen. And I put this last, but I think this is going to become a story later that we're going to need to cover much more intently. And how we deal with a mega publisher now for the first time being owned in part, or at least having the biggest board seat being a vassal of communist China. This is a big thing. Dustin, what do you think?
Well, when I saw this, I felt relieved in a little bit because this is the publisher I care about the absolute least. But that's purely personal. Overall, obviously this sucks. We've seen it feels like we feel like there's like the meme of like the tiny domino, and eventually is like the big domino. Yeah. And that's kind of what we're seeing now, is that you saw Tencent go and kind of buying up all these smaller things, getting bigger and bigger, and then parts of bigger companies. And then now to see this happen, it's weird too, just in that they fought off a takeover just recently. But now it seems like a different type of takeover is happening anyway. So I don't know. I'm curious to see if the Guillemot family is wanting to continue to remain the majority stakeholder. Are they decided they changed their mind and now they're okay with this ownership instead of I can't remember who the hostile takeover was.
Tencent.
Well, no, the one before.
That was Vivendi.
Vivendi, right. So it feels like a very strange situation with all these different elements to it. But overall, I don't really know what to say other than it sucks. But it's not surprising that the targets are set to something bigger now.
Yeah, I think that it's important to note that there is no majority. No one owns a majority of the company. Vivendi was trying to get 50% plus one vote hostily by going to individual shareholders, and they eventually gave up. And I think they just liquidated their shares. So I don't know why this isn't being positioned as a hostile takeover, potentially because they might not be interested in 51% of the company. They might just be interested in being, the biggest shareholder replacing the Guillemot family. But it's as I said so many times, once you get on the board, then you're in. Because as I've said in the past, like, what if they're like, we need a little bit of capital? Oh, we have plenty of capital, but we're going to need 2 board seats. And we're going to need these options, and we're going to need this much of a controlling stake, and so on and so forth. And before you know it, you own the company. You can control the company without owning it. Once you have 50% of the company plus 1 vote, you control the company. That's it. It's over for everyone else. They can vote however they want, but they can't do anything about it. And that's different than ownership. So, for instance, I could own 10% of Ubisoft and still make plenty of money with someone else controlling the company. They can't force me to sell. But you are fiduciarily obligated to bring these deals to your shareholders, and these shareholders don't give a fuck who owns Ubisoft. They want their money back. So I think this is going to be an interesting story to watch. But Chris, let's move it over to you with this one from Bono Clay, who says, "Hey, CC and big old D. News recently broke that Tencent is trying to increase its share size in Ubisoft. What happened to Ubisoft? If you compare the Metacritic scores for critics and audiences for their big franchises between their latest games and their previous games on PS4, the only sequel that did better was The Division 2. Anecdotally, I enjoyed Far Cry 6. I then replayed Far Cry 5 and found that 5 is more interesting, funnier, and just more fun to play." Thoughts? So what do you think about this declination of Ubisoft? As I said in my write-up, I feel like Tencent is targeting them not only because they own a small piece of it already, but because they are the lowest hanging fruit. This is happening when EA is at the same time saying, we don't want anyone to purchase us, we're fine. Ubisoft is singing a different tune, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that of all the publishers that these would be the next guys up. Like, I'm not surprised necessarily by this. I don't know. This sucks. Like, I don't know. We've talked about this a number of times on the show, but it's unsettling. I don't like that we are so just open to this type of very transparent. It seems like such a transparent strategy that I feel like more people in the industry who are working more directly with these entities should be aware of, and maybe they are and they just don't care because ultimately money is king. And I'm only gonna, especially now with like an economy that's like kind of like on the cusp of like collapsing. I feel like people are just like, I need my money. I need my money. Fucking who cares? I don't care how I get it. I'll sell my company to communist China. If I'm gonna never have to worry about a single thing.
Yeah,
in the world
if they
again,
get generational wealth, they don't care about anyone else.
Yeah, so I mean, it's again, I've brought this up many times, but it's the inherent flaw in the way that we do business in this country, and it's that money is king before everything, and it's not how it should be, but it is unfortunately how things go, and it's just a matter of time, really, before we have to reckon with the fact that, yeah, okay, one of our biggest publishers in our industry is a vessel of a foreign government. It's not surprising to me. Like I'm in the position right now where I'm going around looking for places, and it's hilarious out there how many people are buying real estate who are from different countries, who are buying like residential land in hopes of like keeping people in a state of perpetual rent. It's insane.
I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
And it's gonna get bad.
Well, this is where I think the populist, not to get political, but to get political, this is where I think the populist right and populist left kind of come together. I'm populist right. I think Chris is populist left. I think Dustin's more in the middle somewhere, probably. Maybe more populist right, I think, than anything else.
Probably.
But I look at it as, I can't believe it's legal that Bill Gates can own all this farmland, right? I can't believe it's legal that
crazy.
Chinese nationals can come in and own skyscrapers and hundreds of units of, it's like, that to me is just like, no, there's just no way you can do that. And that really does strike. It's how I feel about manufacturing too, with everything that's going on with Taiwan right now. It's like, good, man, let's get that shit. I mean, I don't want anything to happen to them, but like, let's get this shit out of there so we don't have to worry about it. Like, let's get all of our manufacturing out of there. Bring everything home. Everybody come home. All of our soldiers come home. All of our bombs come home. All of the money come home. All the companies come home. Like, we need to worry about us. And it's a sad state of affairs that people will, and I mean, can you blame them? I guess, I don't know. They won't sacrifice generational wealth to do the right thing. And it's like, okay, I mean, it's, as I've said, we're seeing it with the live golf, I don't know what it is, golf tour, the Saudi Arabian thing. Yeah. Donald Trump recently hosted them at one of his resorts. It's like, fuck you, dude. Like this. Yeah. Everyone's just out for the buck. No one thinks about any other way. And I think it's David Jaffe, as you told us on Sacred Symbols Plus, turned down an offer from Tencent to direct a game because he didn't want to work for them. That's a choice, and people have to make the choice, and it is a choice not to make the choice, and it is a choice to work for them. And It's not as easy as that, perhaps, for a lot of people that are in these positions, and we can't live morally economic lives in all ways, but certainly what you do for a living, that's a pretty important choice. Who you work for, it's not what you're not going and buying a tchotchke from the fucking dollar store. It's just different. Yeah. And so, I agree with you. I mean, I just think the pursuit of the almighty dollar is concerning to me. It has made me less conservative over time. There's no doubt about that. I find it, I'm put off by it and turned off by it. And I say that as someone who does pretty well for themselves. I just find it gratuitous. I find people with billions and billions of dollars, I find that gratuitous. People that have $100 million mansions, I find that gratuitous. People that fly on luxury jets all over the world while people are starving and it's, I don't know. I'm just like, I can't get down with it. And I think it's all interconnected with each other.
No, 100%. It's obviously we're getting political, but it's just a matter of, you can't not. This is like what we're talking about is far reaching, and it's really just a symptom of a greater problem. And I think I have no doubt that Ubisoft will be a Tencent company at this point. It's a shoe-in at this point.
I would agree, especially because I think the Guillemot family, to their credit, they fought really hard against Vivendi. They're probably pretty tired. I mean, if it would be cool if they could find someone else or find a good board that would fight back. But I just think I agree with you. I think the controlling share is inevitable. I just don't know that people are going to be able to turn down that much money. It's what happened with Twitter with Elon Musk, although that's fallen through seemingly. The money was so good that they had to bring it to their people and be like, we can't turn this down. I mean, it's just insanity to turn this much money down. But I wish people would think a little bit more deeply about things. And it goes back to what I say all the time, guys. It's all about class. Anything else is a distraction. All the immutable characteristics that we argue about all the time, in my opinion, race, skin, gender, all of that, I don't give a fuck. It's about who has and who doesn't have. And that's it. And your stomach is starving the same way, whether you're white, black, or Christian, or Muslim, or whatever. You have the same unfair working conditions and the same poor pay and all those kinds of things. Those are the interconnected things that bring us all together that we should be fighting about. But I digress.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's get into listener inquiries. We end every show, as we always do, with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Could not do it without you. Make sure to use the thread. You can DM me if you want to talk privately. Do not DM me your comments. I would appreciate that. What is this that I got in the email here? Oh, okay, that's nothing I need to worry about. I'm working right now on getting a pool cover. It's not time yet, but we got to get a pool cover for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
It just never ends, dude. Like, the expenses never end, and I can't take it anymore. Basically, is what I'm saying. And now we're getting married next year. We have the date. It's in October next year, and so now I got to pay for that. So
yeah, where are you going for it? That's what I was wondering. I've been talking with Holly. I was like, I feel like if you go somewhere in the middle, I feel like Long Island is the.
No, we're gonna stay here.
No,
yeah,
you're gonna stay there.
Yeah,
okay.
We're doing it in Richmond. You guys are both invited, obviously, with your +1s.
Oh,
and we're gonna get it all together. We're probably gonna have a small wedding, about 60 or 70 people. And we're doing it at a private golf club in Richmond. And it's going to be awesome. And it's costing me, a lot because we can't, the tradition is we don't want to ask anyone for anything. We want to just do it ourselves. The tradition is that the girl's family pays, the woman's family pays for the wedding. That's tradition, but that's kind of old timey. We're happy to handle it ourselves and have our friends and family. And as I was saying on Discord, I don't know if you saw the woman when we were talking to her at this venue, she was like, you're going to do an open bar. And I'm like, of course I'm doing an open bar. Like, I just want to say this, and I want to say this aloud, and I want to say it clear. And I don't care how much fucking money you have or you don't have. You can't have a wedding and not have free alcohol. I want to repeat that one more time for everyone that didn't hear it. You
might as well not have
a wedding and have a cash bar. And you definitely can't have a dry wedding. And I would, dude, I'm coming out of my way. I'm getting dressed up. I'm giving you a present, right? I'm going to this thing where we're celebrating you. You're going to feed me and you're going to fucking give me alcohol. And that's going to be the deal. I just can't believe that people do that. I'm sorry. It's just totally strange to me.
I agree. I think if you can't do that, you might as well just go to Vegas and do the drive-through thing. You know what I mean? And then maybe just like kind of have a barbecue or something.
Or do what my sister, I remember my sister had beer and wine, right? Just at least do something like that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that really got my goat. I was like, I cannot even believe that's an option. Like, you shouldn't even let that be an option. I'm going to like invite people to my wedding and be like, guys, make sure you tip your bartender and, $5 a drink. Enjoy the wedding.
Yeah. Thanks for flying.
Thanks for flying here. Thanks for being here with me. Enjoy the old fashions. Since you're going to be paying for them, I suggest you stick with the well bourbon. See you there. All right.
I think Chris and I should just get hammered at the wedding. Like disgustingly. I want the cops called after you leave, of course, Colin. We won't ruin your night, but
it's cool, man. We got like the run of this place. Like it's a veranda. It's like an inside outside veranda, like onto like this beautiful lawn, like this.
Ooh.
And like it's pretty dope. Pretty dope. We're excited.
Okay.
More information soon. All right. Mexican Zoidberg wrote in.
Wow.
Says, I agree with you, Colin. Gamers are fucking morons. They need to let go of their obsession with game length. Game length is not a virtue. All this results in our developers filling their game with bloated filler because otherwise gamers would complain that they quote unquote didn't get their money's worth. What I've noticed, though, is that people seem to not care much about game length if the game is part of a subscription, for example, Stray and As Dusk Falls. Despite the fact that both games can be completed in 2 sittings, I haven't seen as many "this game is too short" complaints about these games. I think most people are playing these games via a subscription, PlayStation Plus or Game Pass. I think the subscription model provides a mental barrier for the game length sticklers out there, as they technically didn't purchase the game individually, but rather came with their subscription. I would love to know what you think. Do you think the subscription model will make people care less about a game's length? Thank you, Mexican Zoidberg, for writing in. Now, I think you might be right, but I still don't think it quite washes because, and by the way, everyone talks about my own mental illness with fucking trophies. And I'm not saying you, Mexican Zoidberg, have this, but what you're describing is an even worse mental illness, which is justifying how long a game is based on paying for it or not. Getting in the subscription or not, that's way more crazy than what I'm doing. No offense. You're all fucking casting stones at me all the time. Aspersions. Meanwhile, you're here judging a game's length as part of its value, and I simply say nay. Chris, what do you think about Mexican Zoidberg's thoughts here?
Well, Mexican Zoidberg agrees. Like he doesn't. Right. Yeah, he's not arguing that. But just so
I'm sorry, I'm getting aggro at him,
huh? Dustin looked like he was going to say something.
Well, the only thing I was just going to say is that I would argue that no, game length does not equate to value, but it is a part of it. Like it has to be part of it. It's not the only part. That's where the issue comes in, is that, Witcher 3 is 3,000 hours, therefore good, which I'm not arguing about. It's just an example.
I agree with you there. Yeah. I think that there's an expectation of a certain level, a length of game, depending on the type of game you're getting. I just wanted I'm just making the point that the up axis of game length to quality is out of control. Right. I think it's actually a bell curve, like where a game becomes too long and it's just as bad as becoming too short. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like what is it? That most recent, or maybe it wasn't the most recent, but one of the more recent Assassin's Creed games had that problem where it was
it took like 500 hours.
It was like, wow, this is
new ones.
Yeah, it's like, wow, this is actually good. And then people were like, is this going to end? is this what's happening? And it just feels like an eternity, and your enjoyment peaks and then it goes down in the last like 400 hours of the game. I do think I agree that game length is a part of value, but I find it, I don't know. I've played so many short games that are so good that like, even honestly, like I really enjoyed Stray quite a bit, and that was like such a digestible little game. I feel like it didn't overstay its welcome for me. It ended about at around the point where I figured it should. It was about 4 to 5 hours of playtime, and then out of there. And it's appropriate. Like if Stray was 15 hours long, I would be dead. I wouldn't be on this episode of the podcast because I would have killed myself. Like it's just not. It's just too much for a game like that, and I feel like, you know, the people who are obsessed with that stuff are really confusing to me. But I do think that people do think this way about subscriptions. I do think that there are people out there who will play a game and they'll be like, oh, that was short, but I didn't pay for it, so it's fine. Whereas if they spent money on it, they would be cross about it. You know, like I do think that's a real mentality. I don't know if I've ever seen it necessarily. I don't know if any of my friends think that way, but I have no doubt that that's a thing, because it's just, that seems to be something in general with subscription services. It's like, oh, I watched that TV show and it sucked, but whatever, I didn't pay for it. Or it was like, it was only 3 episodes. I don't know.
It's so weird to me how our value propositions have changed based on this new form of commerce, basically. I mean, it's not new per se, but for us, it's new. And for our field, our sphere. And I think that if you can make the argument, it's not such a big deal the game's short because I didn't pay for it. Isn't the next step? It's not so big deal. It's not that big of a deal. The game's not very good. I didn't pay for it. It's not that big of a deal that they don't give us many games. I didn't pay for them. It's not that big of a deal that the game got taken away. I didn't pay for it. It's not a big deal that the game, it's like, it just, every one of these is adjacent to each other.
I will say also that this length thing attributes to every piece of media that exists, by the way. If somebody recommends me like a drama and it's like, oh, it's a good drama, don't worry, it's 15 seasons. I'm like, fuck you. Like, don't even insult me with that. Oh, a 2,000 episode anime? Yeah. Real excited. Oh, a 7-hour movie? What are you talking about? Go away. There is a bell curve to that stuff where it really is like, you can only get so much. That's why I really adore that first season of Castlevania on Netflix. That is 4 episodes and it's all so good. There's no fat on that steak at all. And it's just primo shit. And I like the 2 following seasons as well. But they were longer, and I did feel like there was something about that quickness in that first season that was like really special. And I don't know, things don't have to be bloated and long for them to be very, very good. And it would be nice if more people thought that way.
Yeah, I think so too. I just read for Knockback Cormac McCarthy's
Dustin's eyes
for
it doesn't have to be bloated or long for it to be good. Take that, Locke.
I just read No Country for Old Men for the Cormac McCarthy novel for Knockback, and it's nice and short and readable, and it didn't need to be any longer than it was. And it was just so nice to read something. I mean, it's not a new book, but it's just nice to read something from someone where it's like, I don't.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you get 3 Hobbit movies for that book that was like 18 pages or whatever the fuck.
Dude, I love the meme. I shared it on the meme channel of the guy shit. There's like a guy shitting on the table in front of another guy. And he's like, why? And the guy's complaining about, he's like, why are you complaining about it? I haven't even shit yet or something like that. And it's the guy shitting on the table.
How do you know it's shit? It isn't even out yet.
That's the one. I'm sorry. I described it horribly.
There's a lot of shitting going on in this episode.
No doubt.
Yeah.
That Lord of the Rings. Next, let's see. James Miller wrote in, said, hey, CDC, long-time listener, first time writing in. With Meta announcing a price rise in their VR headsets, Do you think Sony regrets raising the price of next-gen games so early? Now they could have charged $80 and use inflation as a secondary reason. Finally, do you expect Sony to raise the price of games again this generation, or do you think they have another cooldown period? The UK, for example, has seen mid-generation game RRP. What is that? Is that MSRP?
RRP.
Like the same thing?
Yeah, I think
changes.
so, right?
I'll look it up here. Changes for the past few generations. Now let's see what this must be a RPP meaning. Let's see. Recommended retail price.
Oh,
So like that is MSRP. Manufacturer's suggested retail price. Thank you for.
See, I got renovation and repair program.
Oh, yeah, it could be that. Could be anything really. James, thank you for writing. I appreciate you. So I feel like you talk about the UK, so you come from Britain, so that's probably why the RRP thing, by the way, is there. I have no idea what you guys are talking about in England half the time.
Gross.
So I feel like there's something to this. First of all, can you imagine if Sony raised the price of games again? people are losing their minds over part 1 costing $70. They are losing it. I'm reading the threads on Push Square. I'm reading the threads on these other places. I'm reading the forums. I'm reading Twitter. People are fucking losing it. If they raise that price again, this is what I'm saying. Like what I was saying about the console pricing is that they're kind of fucked if inflation keeps going up.
Yeah.
Because they can't raise prices again. I do think that there is a possibility that game prices go above $70 this generation, but I don't think it'll be an MSRP thing. I still think that there are going to be publishers and developers that will eventually be like, our game is worth more than this. And I used to think CD Projekt was one of those companies that could do that. I don't think that's true anymore. But I think that there are certain companies that could have, just as you want to explore the A and AA space of pricing, 30, 40, 20, you might want to explore a more premium price just to keep up with inflation. But the shitty thing is that $10 investment was, or increase was slated as the cost of doing business. In other words, when Sean Layden was leaving, he was the one that was saying games are too expensive. Our games are too expensive. They're taking too long to make. It's the ROI is just not there. And they're like, okay, we'll raise the game prices $10, and that will help us kind of stem this tide, keep production levels high. And then basically inflation ate all of it. So now they're just right back where they were. And that's the fucked up thing for them. That's serious. And I think
at least they're not still where they were before, like before that, because then it would be even worse. So like, I don't know. It's a. I could see a studio. I could see Grand Theft Auto 6 being a game like that. Like I could see Rockstar being like, you know what? This is a $80-$90 game. I could see them doing that, and a lot of people being like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, totally. Well, because I think a lot of people are like, I personally think $10 is a lot of money. I mean, that's definitely. I'm not a lot of you don't want to wipe your ass with $10 bills, but I think a lot of people are like $10. Who gives a shit? And I think if you do it again, they're going to say the same thing again. But I think there's just going to be a greater chorus of people that are, I just don't know. Like, you're right. That's the kind of company that can get away with it and probably sell the exact amount. But it would come off as so fucked since the economics of games already benefit them anyway. In other words, you would want that. You'd want to see a move like that made on a razor's edge, not on a company that's going to make $500 million the first day they sell the game in profit.
That's that's true. Yeah.
And now they're like, we made $550 million in profit. And it's like, but dude, that $50 million would have been precious to a studio that needed it for the next game. And so I don't know. I think there's something here. Dustin, do you have anything to add about the finances? I find it so fascinating. They couldn't have possibly foreseen the economic circumstances of COVID. Although the price increase was made during COVID, I think they expected things to kind of revert back, but then the war in Ukraine and then the inflationary cycle and all the rest, interconnected gas prices, shipping prices, Chinese manufacturing issues, the issues with I've been reading a lot about copper recently. Apparently, like is going to be there's going to be a run on that soon, and like just the things you can't even imagine are going to be hard to build as they've run into this wall and they're like, oh my God, like the $10 is irrelevant to us now. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get into a situation where they're going to start maybe getting closer to eating shit on consoles, because though the console technology is getting older, there's just such a rarity, a scarcity, which is what Morselaw keeps telling us when he's on the show about how he thinks that a PS5 redesign is coming because it's going to allow them to make the wafers thinner. And so they can get away from having these stifling manufacturing issues. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, I do think that now people and PS5 players and overall, not just PS5, but Xbox also, Maybe not with Game Pass. But anyway, they are more comfortable with the $70 price point. I think people have overall accepted it. I think that a lot of the discussion, it's being tied to The Last of Us Part 1, but it's not really about all games being a $70 price point. It's about that game. It's about a remake that does not feel extensive enough to qualify for the full price tag, when we've seen Sony do a $50 price tag for things more in that realm. Thinking of specifically Spider-Man Miles Morales being kind of that in-between scenario.
Did you? I can't help but laugh about this. But did you guys see that trailer for The Last of Us Part 1 where they were going over some of the accessibility features, and there was this mode that there was like this auditory narrative voice narrator voice that was like describing the characters.
Yeah.
Are there just straight up like sightless blind people playing?
I'm trying to figure this out.
I'm
trying to figure this out because I've encountered a few people who claim that they're blind. Like, I don't know.
Well, I'm blind.
Right.
Also.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if they're.
I'm talking Ray Charles. Like, I can't
totally.
anymore.
Like, I don't. That's what I'm saying is I don't know if like the term blindness means only that, or if it's like severe impairment, like where you see shades or you see colors, or I don't know. Like, I have no idea. But there are a few people in games that I've encountered that are like, I'm a blind gamer, and I'm like, I think one of them actually listens to us, and I don't know what that means.
I'm just curious because if that person is still listening to us, please write in, because I have such a difficult time conceptualizing this as somebody who is pretty blind. Like, if I was just straight up like hammering away at a piano with sunglasses on, I don't know how I could take out a clicker from like a mile away. You know what I mean? Like, it's very difficult to imagine.
He will not be able to write into you. He's blind. No, I'm only kidding.
Oh, damn it!
I'm only kidding. No, please do write into us. And yeah, because I've thought of that as well. In seeing multiple things, there is this move towards accessibility, which I think is awesome. I know you're not saying it isn't. I'm just saying. I think it's cool to see just in that it's exposed us. Like, I find that one Xbox One commercial with the adaptive controller and the kids like all playing with that kid in the neighborhood, whatever. I find that commercial very memorable. And I think there's something to making games more accessible. But what I'm wondering is if that sort of thing is like you're blind where you can see the silhouette or the character vaguely, but you can't see the facial interaction. I don't know. And then you wonder like who is playing the game like that. I have no fucking idea, but they're obviously it's hard to tell. And I don't mean this to be too, I don't know, sarcastic about it, but are you doing this because it makes you look good, or are people really using this stuff? Because I think there's a whole science towards accessibility. There's no doubt someone played The Last of Us 2 with all those accessibility options. The question is, did Sony do that because they felt like they were going to get a nice bump in a write-up from an accessibility magazine or something like that, get good attention in that way, or is it really being utilized? Because earlier we were talking about things being pulled and pushed in games and on hardware that's used or not used. Like we were talking about other OS.
Yeah, the Accolades.
Right, the Accolades too. Right, exactly. And here too, it's like it's cool that those options exist, but to what end? I would love to know more about that. So anyway, okay. Mike Poe wrote in, said, "Good day, gentlemen. Is PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium an inadvertent solution to the game marketplace curation concern voiced by Colin? I know both Game Pass and PlayStation Plus Extra have some duds in their catalogs, but it seems to me that when Xbox and Sony decide to put a game on Game Pass, that is at least some signal that it is worthwhile and that it meets some sort of minimum standard. Am I off the mark here? Would love to hear your thoughts." I suppose so, but I resent having to pay for that service.
Yeah.
That's my big problem is like, I don't pay Walmart to like when I go, or Target, when you go into one of these places and be like, I'm going to pay you for a premium Target experience where I can find what I want. I just walk into Target and there is what I want, organized in a cogent way. I just don't understand why digital marketplaces, which should be easier to navigate than physical spaces, are somehow harder to navigate.
It would be like if you went into your grocery store and you went to the dairy section, and the dairy section had mostly fake milk, and you had to like find the fake milk, but you couldn't tell what was the fake milk until you went to like the checkout. You know, like it was like, oh, I'm sorry, this isn't the right milk. You got to go back and find the right one.
And there's like, and the label's like, misspelled.
Yeah, it's milk. And it's just like a whole disastrous chain of like, I understand what he's saying because it is a curation tool. And I guess technically speaking, purely technically speaking, if we really want to get into the weeds with this, you don't necessarily have to pay for Game Pass or PlayStation Plus to check what's on it to use it as a curation service. That is kind of like the little thing, that the workaround. But at the same time, that's just not how this should function. Like, even though you can use that kind of curation service for free, kind of loosely, it's more of an advertisement for you to constantly visit that thing. And eventually you're just going to be like, I might as well pay for it because I'm constantly here anyway. So I don't know, it's tricky, but I agree with Colin that I just kind of resent the idea that I should be expected to pay to be able to find what it is I'm
right. Like for. You want me to pay you to show me what I want to pay you for? Yeah. It's just too much. I just, but definitely lower the bar for entry. Dustin, do you have anything to add, my friend?
I'm trying to think. I feel like what Chris said is kind of what I was thinking as well, is that you can get it for free. But
yeah, I never thought about it. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together there. That's a great point.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I don't know. I think that I think I said this last week, but PlayStation is getting better at curation. If you look at the store, they do have like groups of things where it's like, hey, check out these cool indies or games that are for Halloween or something, like horror selections and stuff like that. So it is getting better, but obviously this kind of solution wouldn't be ideal.
The thing is, they're getting better because they have to, because now there's so much shit.
Yeah.
You know, like they can't just leave it as is because people are going to be like, what's jumping sushi? Yeah. You know, I can't believe that's a real thing on the.
Oh no! Please believe it. I think it was Brian at PS Trophies that. You think he did a video recently? I might do a little something. I am really upset about what's happening in the PlayStation Network. Like, it bothers me, not only as someone who owns a studio, but just as a player of games. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? What do you think you're doing? Why don't you care? Why don't you care about what is on the platform? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You don't make any money off these games.
You know, I hate to use such crazy language, but it's just gosh dang silly.
It is. It's. I don't even know what else to say.
Pardon my French. But
how else do you say it?
How you said.
I don't even know how I can put it any better than that. Dude, I want to put this, again, just using Super pErIlS as an example, our newest game. Sony might have made, I don't know, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 off of us. That's cool. That's great. I'm sure they're happy about that. But don't you want people to find the games? Like, I think Super pErIlS, we have an 8 on Metacritic, so I think we're a great game. But don't you want people to find games like ours that institute a confidence of some sort? You can't control for taste. I don't even think you control for quality either. Totally. You just have to raise the bar and make it so that you have to reach a certain level of quality. And I really love this idea. The more I think about it, of going back to the old Nintendo rules of like, you can only publish X amount of games a year. You better choose carefully, like what you want to put on the store. And I love that. And I think that's exactly what they should do. I am all about closing this thing down and making it harder to put games on it. And I'll make that argument too. But
I agree. I think when I think back to even the earliest of the Xbox 360 marketplace, because that was when I was really getting into online stuff. There might have been games that weren't to my taste that were available there, but none that were just outright fucking jumping sushi. And the few indie games that were clearly there to, like, I remember specifically like when the indie games scene with ID at Xbox, or I think it was XNA Studio or something, XNA Game Studio or whatever, and a bunch of people got to publish stuff to Xbox. It was stuff like Fortress Craft, which was like and just stuff like that. But that was in its own separate vertical. Like you would have to go out of your way to find. Yeah,
my face is the box art of one of those games. It was called Maximum Fun Times, and it was basically just like a some of my friends at IGN. Yeah, what? It was called. I think it was. Let me see if is it still up? Is that still up?
I'm gonna look it up. Maximum Fun Times. What was it? Xbox 360?
Yeah, Xbox 360. See if you can find it. What it basically was let me see if I can find it here. I'm not seeing it anywhere.
I get Max.
Yeah,
Payne.
I'm not seeing it anywhere. I mean, I'm not surprised. But what it basically was it was made. So who made it was, if people are old IGN fans, was Eric Brudvig and David Clayman, who later went on to co-found EDAR, I think, which is like a huge behind the scenes company in the games industry. But what it was it was just a party game spinner that you would just use to play party games. And it was just, I think it was like My Face or something. And then you would just press a button and it was like a random number generator. And that was available for like 99 cents on XNA. I remember that. And
so silly.
It was, I don't know what I wish that was, they took that stuff down a long time ago, I think. So I think unless you have a console, I'm sure there's videos of a bunch of them, but unless you have console with it on there still, I don't think there's any way to even play that stuff anymore. And I think it's been a while. But that was very forward thinking, because it's, as you said, that was like the farm system. And some shit did get grabbed out of there. The guys that made, they're an RPG studio. The fuck are they called? They made the Rain Slick Precipice role-playing game for Penny Arcade and a few other games, but they made an XNA game.
Oh,
let me see.
What the fuck is that?
Rain Slick Precipice, Penny Arcade.
Hothead?
I don't know if that's it. Penny Arcade RPG. Let's see. Yeah, maybe it is it. Wikipedia. Oh yeah, maybe it is the Hothead. That's what it says.
Because I know they did Death.
Yeah,
Smash,
no, this is not who I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the wrong people.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, there was one team I knew.
Rain Slick Precipice. Rain Slick Precipice sticks out to me because I was like, what the fuck is? I know what that is.
It's not the right team then. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Well, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Morton Rainey wrote in, said, "Dear gentlemen, I was just wondering if the inconsistent usage of capitalization in the PlayStation game titles as they appear when you hover over the game thumbnails on the PS4 and PS5 UI drives you crazy too, or am I just totally batshit? I'm pretty sure words in all caps are supposed to be yelled when read aloud, right? Here are a few of the titles I see in my library right now: Far Cry 6, It Takes Two, Hitman 3, Maneater, Resident Evil 2, Super pErIlS of Baking, The Quarry, Elden Ring, Ape Escape, Hot Wheels Unleashed." You see my point? As a vital part of a game studio yourself, Colin, what the fuck is the rhyme or reason behind the use of caps in these titles? Who decides whether Super pErIlS of Baking should be shouted? Maybe I'm nuts for obsessing over formatting as much as I do, but lack of consistency is a huge pet peeve of mine. Sorry for the long message, but I've been bottling this rage up for years and finally decided to make a Patreon account so I could ask this question. Good day to you all. Thank you, Morton, for writing it.
No, he says, good day to you all.
Good day to you all. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. What do you think, Chris?
First of all, awesome library you got. That's a pretty solid array of different titles.
I agree.
Mainly because Ape Escape is there. But no, I understand what you're talking about. I understand that frustration, but I'm almost the thing is, I wish it was one or the other. You know what I mean? I wish it was either all properly punctuated and characterized, or it was all shouted. The thing that bothers me is that it's both, and it's just complete. There's no rhyme or reason. Some of them are even just completely all lowercase. I know on the Xbox store, because Resident Evil 4, the original, is like an original like port of of Resident Evil 4 to the 360. It's Resident Evil 4, but the R and E are lowercase, and it just looks so weird in my library because it just looks like an accident. And that stuff does bother me. I will say, but I will say, like, I kind of wish they were all shouted. I like all caps. I think I took a lot of like engineering classes in like high school and stuff, and they would teach you to write in your notebook in all caps for some reason, and that's like something that I still kind of do on like whiteboards and stuff. My handwriting's a mess because like it's half capitalized and half not. It looks like a schizophrenic fucking psycho writes on my whiteboard.
I don't know anything about engineering, so.
I mean, me neither. It was like a handful of classes, but I remember specifically like in notebooks, you were encouraged to write in all caps for whatever reason. Maybe somebody can write in and tell me why that is. But
that's interesting. I never heard that. Yeah, it's first of all, it is a pretty good selection of games. I'm looking at them again. I have a problem with this. That's why I wanted to read this. I have a problem with this too, just because I think this goes again into the consistency of presenting your games. There's one thing to say like this is the game the way it's presented. a good example is Infamous. I remember having a conversation with PlayStation at the time because like we wouldn't at IGN write Infamous lowercase I, lowercase n, capital F, capital A, and so on. Like that's how the game is written in all of their marketing on their websites, and it's like, no, we're writing Infamous, like the game Infamous. And I respect that there's like some marketing to it. Intercapping is obviously a thing and all that, but Elden Ring isn't written in all capital letters, so it shouldn't be presented like that, right? It just doesn't make any sense. The other thing that I don't like is just the flagrant use of trademark signs. Like, we get it. I know that PlayStation is a trademark. I promise you I know that. And we all know. None of us, because that R is missing, no one's going to steal PlayStation. It's not going to be possible. It's just not possible. I don't get it. I don't know why you're doing all this. So these kinds of things bother me. Do they bother you, Dustin?
Yeah, they bother me for sure. The only one that I maybe think they can get away with it is Resident Evil, because that's the way they boldly proclaim the name of the game. When you start, it's like Resident Evil. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's kind of iconic now, so they can get away with it. But anyone else, it doesn't have the same ring for Elden Ring. So
it's weird that Hitman is all caps.
Hitman. That's what if it said that when you started the game.
Because Hitman should be all lowercase. It should be Hitman. It should be whispered.
Right.
Trying to be nonchalant about it.
All right.
Anthony Gallia wrote in, said, "Hey guys, hope everyone is doing well. My question is about Square Enix and the rumor you were talking about last week." So what he's referring to is that there's this idea via the ex-founder and studio head of Eidos Montreal that he's heard in his circle that Sony is indeed interested in buying Square Enix, and that the spinoff of their Western studios could be a result of making them lighter because Sony is not interested in those teams. And I don't really blame them. They already have, it's a very much, we already have a George situation with a lot of those teams.
Yeah.
And like, why would you want Tomb Raider when you have Uncharted, et cetera, and so on? So that's what he's talking about. He says, the general consensus with the group, us, is you all don't want Sony to buy Square Enix. I agree with you that this wouldn't be great. And as an older gamer like yourself, Colin, I definitely do not like the way the industry is going with all these mergers and subscriptions. However, since this is the reality we are currently living in, could the argument for Sony to acquire Square or any other company for that matter be viewed as a defensive move on their part? With Microsoft going all in on with Game Pass, the only way that service stays appealing to a wider audience is by having a large variety of games. Sony knows they cannot offer the same thing with day-and-date releases on their subscription service, so wouldn't the next best thing being Sony limiting what their competition can acquire? Thanks again for taking the time to read this, and I hope you all have yourself a great day. Thank you, Anthony, for writing in. I like to separate two things, and I don't think I do this explicitly enough, so let me do it now. I don't want Sony to buy Square Enix. I don't want it to happen. I don't want anyone to buy Square Enix. I don't want any more of this consolidation to happen. I want them to invest in new teams. And they've done pretty well, and they've bought some teams, but that's what I want. If I were at Square and Sony, what would I think? This is something different. And there is no doubt that the M&A that is going on in the industry requires defensive moves. I think Bungie was one of those moves. Not necessarily that Bungie was going to be bought by someone else, but that Sony realized they needed to reinforce themselves, their fortress, in ways that they never thought they would have to, with tools from studios that do things they don't understand. I have a feeling this is going to happen. I don't know why I feel that way. I just feel like there is something in this that could be true when you have someone that connected saying that's what he heard in his circle. His circle is not our circle. That's a much better connected circle within that family. And I don't think people just loosely say shit like that if there's not something to it. However, I would also make the argument and remind people that these things don't leak per se. Could be a feeling, it could be a meeting someone saw happening or a memo or something like that. But when push comes to shove, when this deal is done, no one will know until it's done. Like when the machines are going. This is where law firms come in and intermediaries and boardrooms and CFOs and everything. And that's the way and you can't name a single example of something like that leaking because it doesn't happen. So that's an important component of this to keep in mind. But I am of the mind that, so I should be clear that I am of the mind I don't want that to happen. If I were at Sony, I would think Square Enix is an illogical choice for us. Totally logical. And the only thing that I think makes Square Enix's acquisition touchy, I don't think Square Enix could give flying fuck about its relationship with Microsoft. And that's just me saying the truth. Like, I don't think they care. I think they have a big relationship with Nintendo.
I mean, clearly.
What'd you say?
I mean,
Yeah,
clearly.
right.
I mean, Final Fantasy VII Remake is still not on it.
I don't think they care. I think that they care about Nintendo. And I think this poses a bigger problem than even an acquisition like Activision. Activision games aren't really on Switch when you think about it, right? Some of them are, but not the biggest, not the most important ones. Diablo 4 is not going to be on Switch, I don't think. Maybe it will be, I don't know. But Call of Duty is not, no one's playing those games on there. But when it comes to Square Enix, important, relevant games are played on Switch. And I just don't know if they're willing to burn not only their audience like that on Nintendo, but put away that entire market forever. Switch is fucking huge. Switch is going to outsell PS4. It's only 8 million away, I think, or something like that. It's going to happen. And which will make it the second best console of all selling console of all time behind PS2. And so, Dustin, what do you think? I just, there's a lot here. Again, it's all mystified. We don't know. But I just feel like there is something happening here. And I don't know if the Embracer Group thing is part of it, but you can imagine that Square Enix is trying to lighten the load. You know?
Right. I think that we've seen Sony really start to dive into anime, which is sort of related to this. They bought Crunchyroll, they bought Funimation, and they've done a lot and spent a lot of money to lock down a lot of the biggest Japanese games for the platform. So I think from that standpoint, and they're looking at it as a long-term thing, they see how big Japanese culture is influential and how Square is a huge part of that in the US, which is their primary market now. And so it's one of those things where they're probably like, well, yeah, maybe we should just lock this down. I mean, we've made the argument on this show that maybe they'd be better off just continuing to buy exclusivity, because they don't really need to own Square in order to get that, because like you guys brought up, they don't give a fuck about their relationship with Microsoft. Though they oddly, I was thinking they did throw them a bone recently with Octopath Traveler.
Yeah, that was a random one. I don't know what that was all about. I have no idea what that was all about.
Real weird.
I think it came to Game Pass too.
Yeah, that's how Holly played it. Was on Game Pass on our Series X.
Yeah, I'm jealous about that one.
Yeah, and dude, it looks so good in 4K 60. Really, really good. But so I feel like you said, Colin, the fact that this seems to keep coming up, and it's almost like a where there's smoke, there's fire situation. But I don't know. Is it too soon after the Bungie acquisition? Because like I know that obviously Sony's a huge corporation. They've got tons of money, but they're not Microsoft liquid. So to do two of these back to back seems like a lot when they're currently in a slight decline, like we talked about earlier. Does it seem realistic to you from a financial perspective?
I don't know. Because I'd have to look at how much cash on hand Sony even has right now. I don't know. But that's kind of a misleading stat in some respect, because you don't necessarily, the best move for you necessarily isn't to buy it in cash. You could do it in other ways. You could, for instance, borrow the money, and that might benefit you in a better financial scenario right now, but interest rates are going up and all of the rest. So that's kind of probably off the board. So you probably would think that they would do it in some other way. You can also give people Sony stock and all the rest, but it's going to cost you one way or the other, and they're going to have to pay for it. And I don't know what Square Enix's valuation in a purchase would be, because it would be significantly higher than what it's worth on the market, because they don't have to sell. And so you're going to have to pay a premium. It's interesting to think about what's going to go on here. Chris, do you think that Sony is going to buy Square?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like we said on the show before, we don't like this, and we wouldn't want this to happen. But it is a sound business decision from their perspective, if they're wanting to make sure that, especially with Tencent creeping up on Ubisoft, and maybe there's even a certain moral justification in the idea of just like, hey, listen, better you be with us than be with, I don't know, Tencent or any number of other entities that might not understand your value or any, you know, you could easily kind of get over the moralistic hump of you know, M&A is overall a negative for the industry if you look at it as a way to protect an existing publisher. But I think especially now that the Bungie deal is through, I think because it only recently like finalized. Yep. Like we learned about it a long time ago, but it's only recently been finalized. And with that kind of off the table now, it means they're going to be looking at the next thing to acquire. And I don't think it's too soon necessarily. I think they're definitely going to want to get in before somebody else does. And I think that, you know, it makes sense for Sony to invest in, if they're going to buy a publisher, it might as well be Square. Like, it makes the most sense that it would be Square Enix. So I think if there's ever going to be another acquisition, it will be Square. And I think it will be the next one. I don't know when that'll be. I don't know if that'll be in the next like month. I don't know if that'll be in the next year, but it'll definitely be the next one in my opinion. And I'm not like a financial advisor or nothing, but my gut says, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now. Operating cash flow. This is all in yen. This is so annoying. This is what I was telling Micah yesterday when I read about Sony and Square and all these things. I have to fucking constantly translate the numbers into dollars because it's easy to do with smaller numbers when it's really $1 per 100 yen in perceived value, but that's not really true in the market all the time. And so you have to do the math and it's just like, God, can't you just fucking translate this in the USD? I'm so American. It's fucking ridiculous. Okay. Japanese company that files in Japanese and for the Japanese market, can you translate out of yen for me, please? Like the crying dog meme. Okay. David Wilson II has the final inquiry. It's a fun one. He says, hey, CDC, am I the only one who laments that we don't have Kevin Butler anymore? I think of those ads every so often, and I miss that sort of PlayStation. These days, it seems that organization is more station and less play. Well said, David. Quite poignant. Yes, I miss Kevin Butler.
Yeah.
Here's what I wanted to say about this, because he does come up every so often. Here's how I would position it if I were at Sony. It's like, what do you have to lose by being fun? Like, what do you have to lose? Do you feel like there's a certain quality to the seriousness of PlayStation games that requires a more serious touch? Do you feel like the money is wasted on having spokespeople? Do you feel like laughs don't equate to dollars? I don't get why in a even though we play serious games that make you cry and scare you and all those kinds of things, can kill people in them and all that rest, it's supposed to ultimately be somewhat of a childlike and joyous thing. And I think first and foremost, though I say this all the time, video games aren't made to be fun only. They're meant to entertain. Those are two different things. But where is the entertainment in the presentation that makes it fun? Do you guys remember when Kevin Butler was at E3, how fucking people freaked out? And it was so fun. It was so funny. I was there and people were freaking out. It was just hysterical. And I think they made him available for like fake interviews and all this stuff. And where is that? I just feel like when you win, you forget why you won. And it doesn't only have to do with the product. The product is fundamentally the center of it. You want the product to be great. It's got to be great. And it is. But I feel like Kevin Butler represents a fun that is in short supply. I don't know why that is. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
No, I mean, I can speak to this specifically because when the PS3 was popping, I was an Xbox 360 person, and I had the Xbox 360 for that entire generation. I was like really, immolated in that environment, in that ecosystem. And it wasn't until I think like 2012 that I actually got a PS3, and it wasn't even mine. It was like a borrowed one that I played a bunch of games on. I played like Infamous 2, and that's where I first played Shadow of the Colossus, and some of the Call of Duties on PlayStation to get a feel for how that worked. And it was cool, but I remember being excited about it purely because even from across the aisle, what Xbox was doing was really cool and really fun. But there was something about the way that PlayStation was marketing, and there was something about Kevin Butler being so focal, and there was something about just that ecosystem that seemed interesting. It seemed scrappy almost. And when you compare it to like Microsoft, who even at the time, even though it was like a machine that was like on an iron lung and it was like breathing heavily, and it was like this thing that died every time you turned it on, there was still a feeling of, there was like a premium quality to that machine, and that I can't really describe, because it was like the dashboards that would update every now and again, and they would be like completely new, and then like all these new systems and these indie games that would show up, and there's like the summer of arcade and all that, and it felt very flashy and professional, but they still had like a little bit of that fun with like Xbox, like Larry Herb, Major Nelson, and like a couple of other personalities in there. But over on Sony, it was like PlayStation Home and like Kevin Butler and this weird baby floating in a room with like a fucking PlayStation, and it's like sucking his eyes out, and like what the fuck what is going on over there? It had this mysterious, alluring nature to it that was also kind of predicated on having fun with itself. Like there was something about it that was alluring to me. And it's sad to not have that anymore, because it's so funny, because I think about Sony in the context of the greater gaming ecosystem, and they are of the console guys, they've had great success, but they're way, way, way smaller than Microsoft. They should feel scrappier, but in some ways they don't. In some ways they actually feel a little bit more tight-lipped and a little bit more controlled and a little bit more, I don't know, like sterile. And that's confusing to me, coming from not the financial underdog, but just the underdog in from the perspective of scale and from the perspective of, just size. It is sad to not have anything even remotely like Kevin Butler now. Now we're just stuck with the state of play lady who has, that's it.
And we don't.
That's
and
really,
like you said, it's like the TikTok lady, like saw this Karen at the park, like that voice.
All right, or yeah, exactly. So yeah, or it's Jim Ryan,
right,
doing this,
holding a controller.
But that's not. That's not. That's for us. Like, we think that's funny, but that doesn't. My friends don't know anything about that. Like, that's not like it's something.
I'll tell you right now,
seen.
they don't want Jim Ryan to come off as a funny character. He comes off as funny because he doesn't play games. Like, it's obvious.
Right. No, I know. Yeah, right. Of course.
And which is fine. It's, as we said before, different kinds of people can rise to the top of a mega company like that. And in this case, it's not a creative. It's a money guy, and that's okay. And it's like that doesn't mean the company is bad for it. Jack Tretton was also a money guy. But see, the thing is that Jack Tretton lent into himself being a character. Jack Tretton was likable. He liked it. He was into it. He loved it. Yeah,
he was a likable guy too. Like, I remember I liked Jack Tretton even when I was like, in the E3 things, everybody at that time was like in their fanboy mode. But I was like, oh, I like him. I like Jack Tretton a lot. And I liked everybody on stage back then. It was just like it's good to have those people. Like, even at independent studios, like, for all the missed promises that Todd Howard's made, I can't help but like that guy. I don't know what it is. There's something about him. And there's the same thing with Hugo Martin over at id, when he was doing all those interviews about Doom Eternal, and he seemed like so eager and excited, and he was charming and funny, and it just like it worked in favor of that game, because now not only is that game great, but I think of it in the terms of like, oh, it's also tied to this other positive.
Yeah, and Tim Schafer, I think, is another one of those guys too.
Yeah, Tim Schafer, like all of these really interesting people, and there is maybe not a direct monetary price that you can accurately pinpoint. I don't know if that's there necessarily, but it is there. Like, it's no doubt valuable, because I still think about these people. When I think about PlayStation, I still think about Jack Tretton, even though he's not.
He's
remotely
2 CEOs ago, which is so funny.
Yeah.
Dustin, let's hear from you before we go. One of the most iconic ads, I think I'm remembering this right. You guys were young, but you've probably seen them, is when the PS1 was still out, they started teasing the PS2 with an ad for PlayStation 9. Do you remember these ads at all? That in 99 and 2000, they started running an ad that was for PS9. And it was like an orb. And it made no sense. I don't think it even mentions PlayStation 2, as far as I know. People can go look this up. And that is like, that's the PlayStation I remember, where I was like, what the fuck? But you got it, even though you were like PlayStation 9, like it doesn't say anything, and you just kind of understand that it's just a cool ad to make your shit a little weird and noticeable. They were very good about that in the 90s. A lot of their ads in the 90s were great. And of course, Crash Bandicoot was the greatest with those ads with the megaphone.
Oh, yeah.
But I just,
yeah.
I feel like when I see the ads now, they seem to be made for what we used to do at IGN. We used to call them rewind theaters. I'm sure other people do them too, where like they hide Easter eggs in there, like very cool trailers that try to get as many games in as one, you know, getting a bang for your buck. And I'm like, that's cool when I'm looking for shit on IGN so I can get paid. But as a fan, I don't get really excited about it. What do you think about this idea of missing a Kevin Butler?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, Kevin Butler, I've not said this for a while, but I, at one point months ago, found a contact email for the actor that plays Kevin Butler, and I reached out to him to try to get him on Sacred Symbols Plus.
Did he respond?
He did not respond. No, did not respond. I don't know if it was a good email or not.
Well, dude, that's the journalism thing. I send emails to people on all the time, and like that I want to talk to, and I don't hear back from most of them. But that's what you got to do. You know?
Right? Yeah. But I've always thought. I think it was maybe Jaffe that said this on one of his streams or something, that the pro move right now is for Xbox to hire the actor. They don't have to call him Kevin Butler. Just hire him and have him do the similar type of character. And it's like, it's an easy home run. Like, have him talk about Game Pass.
Really funny.
Well, do you remember that he was removed from that role because he would played a Wii in another commercial? So they took it very seriously. So that would be really funny, you know, knowing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who did that recently? Oh, it wasn't like Sprint did that. It was right.
Yeah, the phone
with
guy.
The phone dude. Yeah,
with the Verizon. No, with the Verizon guy. Right?
Yeah. He went to Sprint, and that was like that was funny.
Yeah, but I agree. I feel like I probably mention this every week, but I'm going to continue to mention it because hopefully Sony PR is listening. It's more than just even the fun aspect of advertising. I think it goes on a whole way that you present yourself as a company, and doing stuff that doesn't necessarily just have a dollar amount attached to it. It doesn't have a $10 upgrade fee number attached to it when you put on a PlayStation experience, something that you can't quantify how many copies it's going to sell or how much money or how much advertising is going to do for you. But there's a intrinsic value to it that you can't necessarily, you know, have that dollar amount. Like PlayStation experience, I feel like was so important and so cool because it was like, I remember thinking at the time that I was like, man, not in a negative way. Don't take this in a negative way. But I was thinking like Xbox doesn't really have something like this where they get, at the time, where you get your most hardcore fans together for 2 days, you show a bunch of awesome games, and then you do panels and
you let them play
like
them.
this just,
you know?
Yeah. And that was just so special. And they just don't. Now we get the
people felt
the
very
anonymous lady.
People felt very VIP at PSX. I remember because it was small, at least for those first couple of years, and it felt like a secret. I remember 2014 PSX like it was yesterday. I remember that show because I was like, this feels like it's a secret. Like this is. People are going to remember that this was what it was once, which was very modest compared to what it became. It's so cool to think back about that.
Yeah, I wasn't at 2014, but I was at 2015, the one in San Francisco. I remember day 2. It was like you pretty much could walk up and play anything. Yeah,
it like cleared out. I remember they lost money on it for sure, but they just weren't. It's different now too. I don't think PSX. I would love to see PSX come back, but I think they should just make what PlayStation Experience should be and come back is like a big 1.5 or 2 hour live stream. Call it the PlayStation Experience and just have. I don't know. They'll figure it out. But that's it. Kevin Butler, come back. We miss you. It's been a long time, really long time. I don't know why we're still talking about you. I guess it's really slow right now. All right, let's get the hell out of here. By the way, I forgot to say this last week, and then I forgot to say it at the top of the show, but I'm going to say it now. I got this letter on Patreon from Wheezy. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but he or she says, "Hi, Colin. This one is for Sacred Symbols. I was hoping you could give my partner and long-term fan of yours, Dennis Uzel, a shout out for his birthday. He's a truly dedicated PlayStation gamer and always has your podcast on in the car. Thank you and have an amazing day. Signed, Lou." Now, I don't know if it's a man or a woman because the picture seems to be a woman, but it's signed Lou. But that could be Louise, you know? They could be a gay couple.
Yeah,
They could be
knows?
a straight couple. I don't think they expected me to examine them quite like this. But Dennis, nonetheless, happy
Probably
birthday
not.
to you, my friend. I'm sorry that I might have missed your birthday, but I wanted to make sure to get that out there.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Happy birthday.
Congrats on surviving somehow.
Yes. Here you are. Oh, I by the way, I was very pleased to see that the American government says that in 2033, more people in the United States will be dying than living, than being born. So our population should start going down, which
Finally.
I know. I agree. All right. On that Malthusian note, let's end this. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
No, man. I got to get ready to. I'm going to. Oh my god, Maryland, because see some family.
Oh, you'll be right in the area.
So.
That's fun.
Yeah, so it'll be a fun
Cool, man.
time, but gotta get to packing and doing laundry and shit. So
Dustin, closing comments.
Let's see. This weekend, Holly is helping her grandma put on a yard sale, so it's a reverse situation for me, and I'm just not too excited about it. But I'm selling all my Marvel Blu-rays that not that I had that many, but I did acquire a few over the years. Get them out of here. I'm a man of my word, and we're just pitching all those $3 a piece.
Nice.
So
yeah, I would
advertise it, but I'm not going to.
I gave away my whole,
I'm not going to do
I
that.
gave away my whole DVD collection. Probably more than 100 DVDs. I was just like, that was years ago, but I was like, I can't have this shit. Do I really need this? Do I need signs on DVD? Great movie. Don't need it on DVD though. In 480p or whatever it's in, 1080i.
Yeah, we're two formats away from that now.
All right, my friends. I'm going to go.
Cool.
I got to go do this thing
Chris
now.
and I are going to stick around though.
Yeah, you guys stick around. I'm going to go. Got to go be with the future in-laws and go in the pool. It's 90 degrees out.
All right.
Ooh. And appreciate you guys. Appreciate all of you out there for your love, kindness, and support. Thanks for watching Sacred Symbols. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Merch is at what? laststandmedia.merch, right? Is that what? .store. Jesus Christ.
Store.
Laststandmedia.store. This is why I should read off the document. I'm going to say it again. laststandmedia.store. .merch. That doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah, that's it. It's time to go. I'm tired. Goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.